OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Hello, good morning, how are things? Wednesday mornings, OTB AM, you're very welcome along to the show. As per usual, we're here until 10 o'clock this morning in all the usual places. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Nathan Murphy, Mayo's finest, and Cameron Hill, Mayo's also finest.
Oh,
good morning.
You went early, didn't know where to go after that.
Yeah.
Joint finest. Oh, gonna have to check under the tables here, sorry lads. Someone's taped a phone. Someone's taped a phone under the table.
Yeah.
Sabotage.
What's that noise?
Check under your...
What's that noise?
Check the desk.
That 3310 I see under here.
Far less
What?
dangerous noise than there was on the BBC last night.
Tell you what.
What is that noise?
I don't know what that noise was, but you'd have to be careful these days, lads. In the broadcasting business, you just never know who's done what.
Yeah.
I'd never really thought of this before, of actually, you know, when the evening crew walk in, that we could leave a little surprise for them.
Yeah.
Little surprise that 7:10, something just goes off in some corner.
Yeah.
Just there behind Paddy.
There's a pair of
Nobody
boots.
will be able to find it.
David Myler's boots, stick them in there, or there's another pair of boots up here. You could easily get away with it.
I really want to know, though, how this happened and the thought process that went in it. Like, is it some angry BBC employee who thought, actually, I'm on my way out of here now,
Screw
I'm
them.
going to take my revenge, prime time, Tuesday night TV, with a phone that looked like it wasn't even an old Nokia. It's from like 20 years ago.
Well, that's it, yeah.
And then set the alarm, was it? Did they set the alarm or did they ring the phone at that exact time?
I think they must have set that as the ringtone and rang.
Was that a BBC employee or was it somebody working in the stadium at Molyneux who
it's a good
decided
point.
this was... But also the madness to come up with that sound effect.
Well, it's the one that's going to get the most laughs and the most carnage.
It's the biggest
Isn't it?
meme of a sound effect.
What sound effect would you have used?
Well, at first when I heard it, I didn't realise what it was, because it sounded more like an alarm going off than what it turned out to actually be. Now, a large part of me does wonder if Gary Lineker, maybe Gary self-sabotaged here, thinking Wolves Liverpool, is it going to draw the crowds? Because never have I seen a man enjoy a faux pas as much as this. It was every pun he could possibly have for the next 2 or 3 hours he went with. He was loving it.
We're calling you out, Gary. Get involved this morning. Did you plant the phone yourself? Was it you all along? Let us know.
Well, if he did, it must have been like ages ago, because as you say, that phone, I don't think that's the type of phone that would be easily bought in 2023.
The phone I didn't recognise. What was
I
the
didn't
phone?
recognise it at
Nokia?
all.
Oh, it wasn't even a Nokia.
It looked like a
Looked
Sony Ericsson.
Was it?
Like something destroyed.
Was it a flip phone?
No. Block, all digits, everything.
Right.
Which means someone was playing the really long game.
It was
It's been
someone
there
working
for
in
17
Molyneux.
years.
It was someone in Molyneux setting up the stage and the studio for the lads, and they were like, do you know what? Do you know what would be great?
It'll be hilarious.
Do you know that noise that everyone sends their mates? It seems like a normal video, and then you click into it in a public place, and lo and behold, other noises play, and you're left red-faced. Let's do that to Gary and the lads. They held it together quite well.
I think the funniest person it could have happened to.
Reasonably well.
Reasonably well. In fairness, it's kind of almost impossible to hold it together quite well when something like that is happening. You've no idea where it is, where it's coming from. I just thought it was Lineker at half-time and full-time most certainly handled it very well. Like, they didn't ignore it.
Apparently we're behind the curve here, so someone says, come on, have you not seen the video? People are like, it was a YouTube prankster called Jarvo. Never heard of him.
Oh, is this the guy that runs on the pitch?
No, that's a
Jarvo.
different. Is that a
There's a
different
few
guy?
Jarvos.
Oh, is there?
Pranksters. It's
So
just a prank, bro.
It's a PR stunt, essentially, by a YouTube guy to...
What's his name?
Jarvo?
Jarvo.
That's what our YouTube commenters have informed us.
He's not the same guy who runs onto the pitch.
I
Who
know
is Jarvo69? Prankster behind Wolves Liverpool porn noise on BBC.
It's the same guy. I mean, if you're going to call your child Jarvo, he's going to be a prankster, right?
Jarvo sounds like he's from Dublin, maybe.
Jarvo.
Stick an O on the end of it, and there's your nickname.
Jarvo69's YouTube channel live streamed the prank from his living room with the video title "We pranked Wolves Liverpool FA Cup sex sound."
I did see this video. I didn't
Prankster
realise
can
that
be
was it.
speaking to a fellow assailant on the phone while live coverage of the game is on the TV behind them. And when the noises began in the studio, Jarvo69, real name Daniel Jarvis, see where Jarvo came from, it's just his nickname, And his pals burst out laughing, knowing their prank had come good, delighted with themselves. However, it's not the only stunt Jarvis has pulled, as he previously raided the pitch in the Champions League final between Real Madrid and Liverpool last year. It seems this was after the match, so it wasn't like, remember that great guy who stood in the Manchester United team photo back in the day. He managed to hug Vinicius Jr. and even spoke to Gareth Bale. He's also been on the pitch at Headingley Cricket Ground, getting close to Johnny Braidstow, and he's managed to sing the national anthem with the New Zealand rugby team as well.
Oh my gee!
I've seen him before. I don't know.
Imagine having that little to be at. You know?
Well, maybe your man Salt Bay is just a prankster, and he's managed.
Well, what age is this Jarvis fella?
I thought he was 69, but his name is actually Jarvo 69. I see where you're going there, Daniel Jarvis
69.
There's a link between his name and the music.
Is it illegal what he did?
Surely not.
I suppose he had to get in there in the first place, so maybe there's a breaking and entering.
I feel like he knows someone in there. And
I doubt
no, there's no way somebody agrees to that. Like, you're getting fired instantly. You're ruining your career.
Oh, I don't know.
No, I think he must have snuck in somehow. Like, that's his
a mole.
operandi, is that he somehow sneaks into.
I do think like Danny Murphy is the funniest person it could have happened to as well.
Oh, for sure.
Because he's just shitting himself the whole time.
Yeah. He's like, what do we say here? What happens now?
What do we? Yeah, he was just. You could see him kind of flinching, his eyes kind of fluttering.
He's in his late 30s, Jarvo. I mean, Jesus Christ, young Jarvis, would you please just find something to do?
Well, he is.
He's doing it.
Well, he is,
He's
but
found his niche.
Find something adult to do.
Well, let's just see.
No, sorry. I'll put an
He has 175,000
He did do something adult.
subscribers. 175,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Wonder how many he had before last night. I'm sure
I'd say quite a few. I've definitely seen him during Six Nations games coming on.
Right.
And he scored it off.
It was a golden TV moment, one that we'll remember for quite some time.
I'm so glad it didn't happen to Micah Richards.
Yeah, it would have been too
much.
Too much. I really wish it had happened to Roy Keane.
Yeah.
What would Roy Keane have said?
As he said when the phone went off during the press conference. You going to turn that off?
Who wants the phone?
He would have. Keano would have sussed it out straight away and ripped it off the chair and gone, can't be having this.
I think mellowed Roy Keane would have had a nice quip, a nice funny comment maybe to make.
I don't think so. A notorious pitch invader Daniel Jarvis, also known as Jarvis 69, he has reappeared at multiple rugby matches following his series of pranks at the cricket over the last year. So one of the cricket matches he arrived in a tent, basically pretending he was camping at the cricket. But he tried to get on the pitch for an Ireland-England match. So as you said, he lined up beside the All Blacks in a game against Wales. And then he tried to get on a pitch in an Ireland-England match and got properly taken out of it. He tried to stand beside the England team at Twickenham. However, security quickly realised what was happening and made one of the best tackles of the tournament, taking him cleanly to the floor before holding him there while waiting for support to arrive.
Wow. I mean, life comes at you fast, Jarvo 69.
Of course, unfortunately for England, they could have used more aggression like that on the pitch as they felt with disappointing 32.
We have a lot of fun here.
Yeah, this is funny. It was just one of those great moments. You'd almost forget that there was a match afterwards.
Well, there were loads of technical issues if you watched the game. Because the floodlights went.
The power surge. Or a power cut.
And then they didn't have VAR for the first 3 minutes or something.
I mean, Jesus. We've got a message in from our producer, Colm. All right, let's talk about the bloody football.
Okay.
Mate.
The second.
We probably should. I mean, the game was... Well,
you were at the cinema, so...
Yeah, sorry, and I don't make any apologies for this. So I went to see A Man Called Otto last night, which is the latest Tom Hanks film. Now, folks, if you're going to go see A Man Called Otto, be prepared to let go of a few tears.
Okay.
It's a bit of a tearjerker, but it's also heartwarming and inspiring at the same time. Tom Hanks in his later, mid to late 60s years, he's taken on roles of... Well, he basically plays an old, grumpy man in this film, and it's his development from that into a good neighbour and a good person that we can all be proud of.
Well, the book is apparently very good, so you enjoyed that.
Oh, it's a book.
Has it surpassed Castaway?
Do you know what? Castaway, for anyone, Castaway is the GOAT. I do have the quote from Tom Hanks. Tomorrow the sun will rise, who knows what the tide could bring. Castaway is the GOAT of movies.
That's what Jarvo 69, that's how he lives his life.
You know what?
He's got that quote.
Fair play. He probably watched Castaway last night and said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go for it. Tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide could bring? I'm going to strap a phone to the BBC set.
I like Castaway. I think everyone likes it. There surely can't be anybody who doesn't like Castaway.
Castaway is fine.
But it's always going to be, if it's on the TV, it's one of those movies you can pick up halfway through and go, I might just watch the end of it. It's nice. I'll feel good after it.
Fine.
To have it as your favourite movie of all time.
Sorry. Name me another movie that makes you cry over an inanimate object. When Wilson is floating off and he's like, Wilson, you're bawling crying, and it's a feckin' volleyball with a bloodied face painted into it. And yet you cry, you're like, oh my God, the inanimate object is floating.
Not just talked yourself out of the entire reason why maybe it's not the greatest movie of all time.
No, the fact that the directors...
Think about what you're saying, Shane.
The fact that the directors made you cry over that is the beauty of it. It was one of Tom Hanks' most unbelievable performances. And the other way, he spends 3 or 4 years on the island, and he comes back and he's all skinny and tanned. He genuinely lost all that weight and grew the beard and the hair. So it wasn't like a makeup job or a CGI job. Tom Hanks put in the work. I think he lost out on the Oscar that year somehow, but to be fair, I think it was Russell Crowe's performance in Gladiator that beat him. Yeah. So you're like, oh, okay, both of those were pretty good performances.
I mean, a lot of the objects Russell Crowe was talking to were inanimate.
Yeah. Philadelphia and
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. 2 years in a row, I think. Tom Hanks, I mean, like I watched Apollo 13 over Christmas. I rewatched Saving Private Ryan as well. Like The Terminal, Captain Phillips.
Terminal's great. Terminal's very underrated.
Victor Novorsky.
He died recently.
Yeah, the real guy.
Yeah.
What's your? Did you watch anything non-Tom Hanks?
Are there other actors?
That's a fair point. Favorite Tom Hanks movie? Well, I'm old enough for Big was probably one of the.
Big is very really problematic now, though, isn't it?
Growing up,
is it problematic?
Isn't the whole thing like when you watch the end of Big now, you realise that she like the fact that she sees that this was a 12-year-old boy she was talking to the whole time and doesn't.
Is she aware of it?
Like projectile vomit immediately that she was in love with this guy is kind of problematic, no?
Is she aware of it during the film?
No, but at the end she realised and then she kind of is like...
Oh, she is aware of it. Maybe,
she's aware during the film.
She becomes aware. By the end she's aware.
By the end of it she's aware. I think
it's problematic if you want to make it problematic.
Yeah, but she lets him walk off into the distance as his clothes slowly get bigger and he gets smaller and the clothes fall off him and he turns around and waves.
I'm slagging you off about watching all. I watched Sully over Christmas again.
Yeah.
Even though I know what happens.
Yeah.
But
Captain
again,
Phillips.
I feel so sorry for Tom Hanks in this.
The anniversary was recently there 3 days ago, January 15th, 2009, flight 1549. I read his book, Captain Chesty Sullenberger, the real guy.
Right.
Brilliant.
I'm going to go favourite Tom Hanks movie, Catch Me If You Can.
Oh,
Are we counting that as a Tom Hanks film as well as a
Leonardo DiCaprio movie?
Yeah.
It counts, doesn't it? Yeah.
Or Forrest
Gump.
It
does.
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. Forrest Gump.
Green Mile is a great film.
Yes.
I was going to go
Toy Story.
Here. Well, Toy Story, but again, does doing the voice of Woody count as making the movie?
Well,
actually, I watched them recently. Elvis.
Yeah, brilliant.
I haven't seen it yet.
Brilliant in Elvis. Did you have a shout, Colin? Castaway, good man. Fantastic. What did you say, Cameron, is your favourite?
What did I say just there?
Apollo 13 is brilliant.
Go for the clickbait answer, said. I don't really like
Captain Phillips is brilliant.
Captain Phillips
is brilliant.
I'm a big Forrest Gump fan. Haven't watched it in years, but I
feel like I think me and Tom Hanks would be best friends. I'm big into history and World War II history.
Everyone thinks they'd be best friends with Tom Hanks.
Sorry, but
every time he comes on Graham Norton, you go, I'd get on really well. I'd love to be on that couch. I'd fit right in. Tom Hanks would find me funny. I'd tell my couple of great stories. He'd laugh along. We'd go for a drink afterwards. Probably stay in touch. Well, that's not the truth. Tom Hanks walks off there and he never talks to those people again. He barely acknowledges them when they're there.
He created Band of Brothers and the Pacific and look. So I know we could talk World War II. He's also a massive space geek. He's met and befriended a lot of those Apollo astronauts, some of whom are no longer with us, as have I. From the Earth to the Moon was a great HBO series he did. He's of course done Apollo 13. We would have so much to talk about, me and Tom. In fact, he's got a novel coming out in May, right? This fiction novel. I'm going to make a call out. I think by May I am going to get sitting down with Tom Hanks somewhere in the world, and I'm going to make this a project over the next few months. I am going to get 10 minutes one-on-one with Tom Hanks. You heard it here first.
There's something they say about meeting your heroes, right? There's a famous adage.
You could do something like, do you remember that Caroline Moore used to present this show on RTE many years ago? I think she won a reality TV show to even present it. And the entire point of the show was basically, it was a mad concept in RTE. It was basically you had to stalk a celebrity. So if you said, I want to meet Tom Hanks, they would basically pay you and send a camera with you to find him wherever he is in the world. So everyone would obviously go to LA chasing like George Clooney. They'd find the gym he went to and they just have to hang around there. You can keep going with that music. I'm going to be like Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
Keep playing
the piano there. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Anyways, well done, Tom Hanks. You've done well.
Road to Perdition.
Finally, he's been acknowledged.
Yeah, people are pointing out their favourites, Turner and Hooch. Wilson, Road to Perdition is his best. Someone, Aidan says, enough of the Tom Hanks, please. You can never have enough Tom Hanks, to be fair. But that was my little moment. I had to say it.
I think you're wrong about the if I met him, I'd get on with him. I mean, a lot of people probably think that about you, Shane. They probably think about you.
Which sports person would you most like to meet? So Colin wants us to move on to sports, so I'm going to try and keep this conversation going.
Sports.
Who is the sports person that you've always wanted to meet, but you're afraid of meeting them because you're like, as you say, Nathan, don't meet your heroes. Like there's a few in my head.
We need to come back to this. I'll need to think.
We'd need to come back to this.
Pretty
I think we put it
important,
out to the viewers, listeners.
Yeah. But Liverpool, impressive.
No.
Well, Klopp said for the first time in a while, an impressive performance with the result.
Yeah, Wolves were very unimpressive and felt like the perfect team for them to play last night. Now, Liverpool brought an energy that they didn't have against Brighton and Brentford. Like the worry for Liverpool fans for both of those games would be heading in. You knew exactly what Brighton and Brentford were going to bring. Yeah. Good form, good intensity, know what they're about, get at you, can control the game, and they both completely outran Liverpool, whereas last night he made a load of changes, didn't really reflect a normal Liverpool team at all.
No.
And the young players came in with an energy, they played well. Moutinho and Neves are two technically brilliant midfielders, but they couldn't live with the pace of the younger players, and Thiago was probably the best player on the pitch in a game that didn't really matter. Where is that when you need him over the last couple of matches? And the most interesting thing, I think, was Harvey Elliott scored a brilliant goal.
Yeah.
He's been playing a lot deeper, which I just feel it doesn't suit him or Liverpool. He's replaced Mo Salah last night, and it kind of feels that should be his role. Like, he's still only 19, because he's the youngest Premier League player ever, or was the youngest Premier League player ever. You sort of feel that, where's his development at? But he's been playing quite often on that right side of a midfield three, which for any teenager in a Liverpool side that's all about intensity and physicality and turnovers,
absolutely
doesn't seem to suit his style. And I couldn't understand over the last few months why they keep persisting with playing him there. Like, you'd be better off limiting his game time and playing him instead of Salah when you need to rest Salah. And last night, without maybe the same amount of defensive responsibilities, he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, quality.
I thought Curtis Jones was very good last night as well. I was really impressed with his movement, especially off the ball. But yeah, Wolves they couldn't fire a shot.
It was only towards the end that they kind of started threatening. But first clean sheet for Liverpool since the Derby game, November 9th, which is mad. Like, he made the 8 changes, so obviously loyalty out the window when it comes to a team not performing. Klopp was fairly strong to his word, stuck to his word. He was like, well, I'm going to change this team completely. They're just not good enough. James Milner as well, 37 this month. He's coaching the Liverpool Academy, is he? And held it together a bit last night for them. Bit of experience.
Yeah, he did. Let's see what he does Chelsea early Saturday. How many of these players keep their places? Does he reward them, or is there that bit of, well, actually, it was an FA Cup game that, although Wolves were at home, as I said, they never looked like creating too many chances. Joe Hodge played and he started. It was taken off after half time again, never got a touch on it in the first half. It was a big Irish interest last night. Caoimhin Kelleher did what he had to do again, and they weren't exactly unloading on him. And Nathan Collins again just looks Rolls Royce. There's probably a little bit to go in his defending, but just his organisational. But for a top 4 team, that's all you keep looking on. He's so comfortable on the ball. He'll have to do a quarter of the defending he would have to do at Wolves. So any mistakes he makes are going to be nullified straight away.
Can you see him ending up at one of those top 4, 5, 6 teams?
I think so, yeah. In a way, would it be the best thing for him if Wolves were to be relegated this season, so that he definitely goes and gets his move?
Which club
stood out?
Would he suit best, I guess, is the question.
I think for any, I think they all want their centre backs now to be able to play football, to be able to step up, to have a range of passing. So it depends, needs must during the summer. Like, if you're looking at a top club who's going to sign him, you'd have to say Chelsea, because they're signing everybody else right now. But
true, yeah.
Would he fit in at a Manchester United now? I think absolutely. But they've got Varane and Alessandro Martinez. He'll want to go somewhere. He'll play. Wolves don't sell unless they really feel they need to sell. So maybe he does another 18 months at Wolves, and then he's ready.
The other games in the Cup were probably more exciting last night.
Well, the excitement obviously on the BBC was pre-match, and then they just showed some quick highlights of Birmingham against Forest Green Rovers, where it was an unbelievable goal for Forest Green Rovers. It was the most perfect top corner, right-footed curling strike I have ever seen. And then the Birmingham keeper, Kevin Long, by the way, scored for Birmingham in that. He's spent so long at Burnley. He's gone to Birmingham. He's played football. Birmingham keeper makes the most insane triple save I have ever seen in my life. The first one palms it onto the crossbar, comes back to the Forest Green player, who's basically got a tap in, jumps out of nowhere, and then as the third one's coming, he managed to get a little punch on it as well, which you barely noticed.
Class.
So that was that game. And then West Brom Chesterfield was poor old Chesterfield, non-league team, and it was the most non-league defending you've ever seen. The first one is just the centre back hoofs it, slices it straight up into the air, and then it might have even just been 1-0 at this stage. One of their players is dribbling out of his own box and decides to play a back heel inside his own box, straight to the West Brom player, who
Julie does the dutiful.
Yeah,
I mean, that's disappointing. Chesterfield won't watch the highlights. We should mention we've got the Australian Open in front of us here as well. But Rafa Nadal is out, beaten in straight sets by Mackenzie McDonald, the American, 6-4, 6-4, 7-5 in the Rod Laver Arena. That's a surprise. Now, he was carrying an injury, it appears, so clearly hampered him in his efforts this morning. But another big name bites the dust in the men's draw. It's quite surprising.
Yeah, it feels a little processional for Djokovic now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't see anyone really stopping him.
Tsitsipas and Casper Ruud, are they the two top? And Medvedev, as Colm says, you'd love to see a competitive men's draw, but yeah, as you said, Djokovic is he's gone from strong favourite to really strong favourite, probably.
Yeah, it just seems inevitable, which makes it sound like we're in a Marvel film and the villain's going to get away with it.
Yeah, he's not the guy you want to win.
No,
I mean,
you're being kicked out in a minute, Cameron.
I am, yeah.
Ireland squad's been named tomorrow morning. Go on, the Connacht Mafia will give their point of view.
Actually,
I'm sure you have a few others as well you'd like to see in there.
Right, here's my hot take, and I'm going to leave them smiling. Ross Byrne to play Wales, France and England, and Jack Crowley to starting in Scotland and Italy.
No Sexton?
No Sexton.
What?
We nearly beat France without Johnny Sexton last year, and that was the toughest game of the year.
I hope we continue to nearly beat teams without Johnny Sexton.
Well, I think we could.
That's where we go when we
year.
actually beat them with Johnny Sexton.
Yeah, let's lose every game in the Six Nations by 2 points.
There's no way. So you think Andy Farrell is actually going to make the decision that lots of people have been calling for years, that we just give Johnny Sexton the rest and we throw somebody in? So he's not even going to go with Joey Carberry. Joey Carberry's out of the picture completely.
I think so. I think.
You know what, Cameron? I like it.
What's this
he's
based
a
on?
finisher. I don't think Joey Carberry can set the pace of a game.
But so you're saying Ross Byrne starts, Joey Carberry's on the bench, and Sexton doesn't play at all?
Yeah. Unless he's there as injury cover in case Ross Byrne or one of them picks up an injury in the first game, which I feel is going to be very intense and physical because it's Wales and it's Scotland. But I think as much as we can, we try and limit Johnny Sexton's play and maybe get him off the bench. I think.
Bold call.
It's a very bold call.
Right, so a Crowley mix with Ross Byrne for the Six Nations.
I have found a flaw in your idea here.
Go
that
on.
would mean naming 4 out halves in the squad.
3 for the moment, and then we bring someone in.
Sexton's going to be fine.
Sexton's going to be fine. So bring in Carberry if Crowley or.
So you don't even pick Carberry in the squad.
I don't think so.
Oh, Joey, if you're watching.
Or have him in as like your centre, as one of your centres, or bring him in somehow. But I haven't been impressed with him over the season. I really think he's going to have to pull some great performances for Munster to get back into contention.
Listen, I mean, we'll ask Keith Wood about it, and he'll either go one way or the other, Cameron.
No, there's no way. Listen, I think there's a case to be made for Ross Byrne or Jack Crowley or whoever to be the backup or maybe get a start. But like if Sexton's fit, Sexton's in the 23.
Fair.
I don't know.
Cameron, on that note,
thank you
so much. And
looking forward to social media today.
We'll see what the YouTube commenters think of that at 7:54 a.m. on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. The rest of the show, 8:05. It's the first GAA Power Rankings of the year. Tommy Rooney will be bringing us through the Power Rankings and letting us know which county is in what position, and of course we'll rip it apart. 8:20, as I said, Keith Wood would join us to talk Eddie Jones, Munster, and Cameron's wild take there on the number 10s. John Duggan, 1JD please, at 8:40 a.m. We'll talk a bit of Spurs after disappointing North London derby defeat at the weekend. Jess Kelly would join us to talk tech at 8:50 a.m. this morning. Dan Quirke and Niall Quinn would join us at 9:10 and talk sudden adult death syndrome and a new charity named, of course, for Dan's son Dillon Quirke, the Clonalty Rossmore hurler who tragically died on the pitch very, very suddenly. And Niall Quinn, of course, with strong links to Tipperary, is involved with charities in that area as well. And from 9:30, we'll hear from Graham Hunter, who was on last night's show. But Kathleen McNamee has joined us in the studio this morning. It's a very Connacht, like we've gone from two Mayo lads to a Sligo woman here as well. This is, I feel, kind of outnumbered.
It's just a general theme of shows that I like to be on, is either having loads of people from Sligo or just Connacht in general.
Yeah, those are your rules. You won't go on air otherwise.
Basically.
Are you claiming Adrian Barry's from Connacht?
That's true. I was on
Which
with
is
Adrian.
He's Athlone, isn't he? Which is both.
Yeah, no, I'm fairly sure
But he
he's
was
from the
Kilmacud through and through.
I'm fairly sure he's from the Connacht side of. Well, it wouldn't be unusual for a Connacht man to become a Kilmacud man through and through, would it?
No. Super
yeah,
club.
Yeah, no, he likes to claim he's 100% born and bred Leinster, which is fine. Listen, the geography at Athlone is a confusing thing.
It is, isn't it? It's the same in Newry. I was born in Daisy Hill Hospital.
It's a slightly more contentious thing around there, though.
Yeah, but I was born in Daisy Hill Hospital in Newry, right? I
never knew you were born in Newry.
There you go. So it's on the birth cert as well. My younger two siblings were also born in Daisy Hill, but my older sister was born in John O'God's Hospital in Newry. So she's in the County Down side of Newry, and the three of us were born in County Armagh. So technically, I mean, we're all born in Newry, but two different counties. This can be contentious, guys, in different counties and different towns across the country where rivers separate counties. I mean, it's controversial. It's not too controversial. I really don't care.
In your household.
It's very complicated for this time in the morning as well.
It is. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, but sorry, you thought I was going to say I was from County Down, but technically, Kathleen.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like everything I know about you has now just completely changed. You know,
Right.
Monaghan man through and through, but you were actually born in Armagh.
If I had my say, I would have been born in Monaghan Hospital. I just wasn't. It actually irks me. It's one of my life's great regrets, but I couldn't control it. See, when I get a car, I don't care what car registration is on it. If I move to Nepal tomorrow, I'm getting a Monaghan reg. I don't care. MN. It has to be MN.
I don't think you're allowed to do that. I think you might be arrested.
Or Monaghan people do what they want. Violent people up there, apparently. Kathleen,
Yes.
we have been over the last couple of weeks talking your story, which has gone viral, I think, safe to say, with Emma Mitchell and her story of her pregnancy and how it impacted her career and how it impacted her financially. To say it's done the rounds would be an understatement, but we've heard in a column from Sara Bjork Gunnarsdottir, and I hope I've pronounced her name correctly, formerly of Lyon, currently of Juventus, an Icelandic legend. She's won the Champions League, but she's written a piece along similar lines. There seems to be a bit of a follow-on to the story.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, like you say, Champions League winner, scored in the Champions League final when she joined Lyon. But she wrote this article in the Players' Tribune last night talking about her experiences in Lyon when she was pregnant. So, Lyon is the club that we always put forward as they've put so much money into the women's game. You know, they give amazing contracts. They sign all the top players. You know, they've won the Champions League 8 times. They've dominated in France until like the last couple of years where PSG have come up a little bit. Whenever they win, Jean-Michel Aulas, who's the club president, gives all the women like kind of NFL style rings to like mark that they've won another European championship. And generally you'd say, you know, seems like a good club for supporting women. But according to this piece that she wrote, that is not the case. So she became pregnant around March 2021. So about like a year and a bit into her contract with the club. And she says, like, in the back of your mind, you feel guilty of something, like you're letting people down. So that was her first reaction to finding out she was pregnant, but she went ahead with it. She decided she didn't want to tell her teammates for a little while because, you know, until you're 12 weeks, things can happen, you don't know. But she did tell the team doctor and the team physios, and they were really supportive of her. Then they were playing PSG, which has kind of become one of the big games. It's a bit like Chelsea-Arsenal in England. It's the game where whoever wins tends to go on to win the league because it's so close between the two of them. And the coach asked her, did she want to come on at half-time? And she was like, I actually just physically can't. Like, I've thrown up 3 times already today. It's not possible. So that was kind of the stage where she realised she had to tell her team. And initially, the club seemed quite supportive. The doctor, the club was just like really uncertain if she could or should keep playing because COVID was happening at the time and she was quite sick in that like first trimester. So it was agreed that she would return to Iceland and she would like continue the rest of her pregnancy there. Club seemed absolutely fine. And so she went back to Iceland. She said she felt like a weight had been lifted off her because she didn't realise how much tension she was carrying in her body, stressing about the team and whether she could play, whether she should play, what was the right thing to do. And then it came to like a month later, and, you know, the paycheck arrives in. It's always a great day for all of us. And there was no paycheck. And she was a bit like, oh, this is strange. But she was like, I'm in Iceland. Maybe something has got mixed up along the way. It's fine. I'll check out with the club. So her agent reached out to the club. No answer. Next month came along. No paycheck once again. Her agent reached out again. Still no answer. FIFPro, the players' union, reached out. No answer. She then went to FIFA and she was like, you know, what's going on here? I should be paid. And FIFA got in touch with the club, and the club were like, well, under French law, we're not going to pay you anymore. We're sorry about the first 2 months. We'll give you that, but we're not paying you anymore. Now, rules had just come out in FIFA that under those laws, you should get 14 weeks and at least 2/3 of your wage during that 14 weeks, including 8 weeks after you actually had your baby. So these were quite like big laws. And she says at the time, like, I knew those laws existed, but I actually didn't know how they applied to me because I'd never paid attention, or I didn't expect to get pregnant. But basically what the whole thing shows is that she was then completely alienated by her club. She went down the legal route with FIFA, and the club said, if you go to FIFA, you'll never play for Lyon again. Wow. Which, you know, you can imagine someone coming into work and saying, sorry, you got pregnant, you're never working here again, you're never sitting at your desk again, whatever it is. But she did. She went through with it. She went back to the club after she had her baby, and she tried to play there, but it seemed like they made it very difficult for her, and it seemed to go right throughout the club. She talks about Jean-Michel Aulas coming in to the room one day when she was there and just completely ignoring her baby. So yeah, she took her case, she won. Lyon now have to pay her over €82,000. So like, it's quite a lot of money that she was missing out on with it all. And she eventually got a transfer away and went to Juventus. But it's just all the things she was talking about were exactly the same things that we talked to Emma Mitchell about, you know, the feeling of isolation, the feeling of players not knowing how to react to you.
The guilt as well.
The guilt, yeah. The wanting to train but not knowing how much you could train. And with like, she said the doctors and physios were actually very good to her at Lyon. But that the knowledge gap was still there. No, but they did try, so there was that. And obviously there is a difference where Reading did pay Emma Mitchell during her maternity leave, so that part is different in the two cases. But yeah, it's so mad. And like in the FIFA rules, it says the proposals provide that a female player should not suffer any disadvantage on the basis of her pregnancy, which is just a general rule in employment, you would think anyways. So yeah, it's on the Players Tribune. It's really worth a read. It made me want to throw my phone out the window when I read it last night, that women are still going through this in 2023.
Well, it's basically abuse. What's gone on here is abuse, mental abuse, and there's clearly, as you mentioned, over €80,000. But the stress of that while you're pregnant, of not getting paid, of just having a new baby, of having your entire career basically taken away from you, and the club, it seems, clearly trying to lay down a marker, knowing that word would get round to the other players, that if you follow her path and if you end up getting pregnant, you're out of this club. You don't get to play for the biggest club in the world. You don't get to play for the most successful club in European football if you intend having a baby.
And as well, doing this to such a big name player as well, you know, like she's very well respected, she's very well known. She played at Wolfsburg for like 4 years before she joined Lyon, captains Iceland, you know, one of the best midfielders out there. You know, it's not like you're doing this someone who doesn't have a platform as well. So yeah, it's insane. I'm so glad she like did go public with it, because otherwise we wouldn't know this. This result came down in May, or was it? Yeah, I think it was May last year. And no one has known about it since then. It's just that she decided to write this Players Tribune article about it. But it just makes you think, you know, how many other players have maybe become pregnant and just dropped off the face of the earth, and we didn't know why. We didn't. And this is Lyon, a club that clearly has the money to do these things. You know, it's not like they don't.
Think far graver things than that as well, that the pressure players are under not to have children, as to what's going through the minds of young women if they do get pregnant, with the pressure they're under from their clubs. Like, there is, obviously, off the piece you did last year, there's such a big question. You know, I even think about the developments we're looking for in football in this country and professionalism, that is football fully thinking through that everything is involved in professionalism. It's not just paying somebody a wage every week to play football. There's all the other bits that come into that. Like football and sport seems to think it's completely separate in terms of workers' rights, and in many ways it is. You get away with things in a sporting arena that you would never get away in a normal workplace. But that football clubs are making people professional and then just assuming that actually the things that happen to women in normal workplaces wouldn't happen to them, and they're just totally ill-equipped for what happens next and just want to put their head in the sand and completely ignore it.
Yeah, well, I know we've talked about the US League in maybe like not great terms in the last couple of weeks, but like say clubs like Angel City there, the top pick in the NWSL draft this year, Alyssa Thompson, she's the first ever high school player to actually be drafted into the league as a pro. And the reason she joined Angel City was because they said, well, we're going to make sure you have a full education program. You can do your third level degree while you're playing pro with us. Might take you a year or two longer than normal, but we are committed to doing that. And she said that was one of the specific reasons why she joined that club. And other US clubs are actually quite good at, you know, providing this sort of, whether it's fertility care, whether it's maternity care, they're already writing those into their contracts. So like there is an example there that could be followed if clubs chose, but like it's exactly like you said, it's not just paying someone a wage. There is so much more that goes into this, and it's so much more that maybe women do require when they play sports because of that element of if you want to get pregnant or if you want to have a family, you know, you do have to take that into consideration. But like, why not? Yeah. It's such a big thing in everyone's lives, you know. And if anything, most of these women are like more and more determined to get back to play and to be even better when they come. Like Alex Morgan is playing better now than before she had her baby. And yes, it took her like nearly a year afterwards to get there. But, you know, why are we writing these players off? Why are we saying, well, no, you've had a baby, so, you know, you're not going to be able to run and score goals. That's simply impossible. It's
an insane story. ThePlayersTribune.com, as you say, Kathleen, for anyone who wants to read that, it's a crazy story. And as you say, even the guilt, like it being told, you know, finding out you're pregnant and then having
should you just be like, well, if
guilt.
you're in that position, which she was, you should just be happy. She was like, I wanted to be happy, but I couldn't. I felt guilty. And you're like, that's the worst place to be.
Yeah. Highly recommend for people to seek that out this morning if you want to have a read, as we say, theplayerstribune.com. Kathleen, thanks a million, as always. 8:07 a.m. on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM. After the break, we are doing our very first Power Rankings, GAA Power Rankings of the year on OTB AM, with a brand new mayor in town, Tommy Rooney, who has ruthlessly and callously capitalised on Owen Sheehan's absence. And during these ads, to suitably whet the appetite for the return of the slot that Owen Sheehan made iconic, you will hear a clip from the Football Pod, which returned on Monday night for its third season. We'll have Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue, with Tommy himself discussing Galway's chances in 2023. The Football Pod in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Check out #TheToughest for more. Back in a sec.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB Sports Rugby.
One name to win the World Cup. If I was throw one out right now, I would always go back to South Africa.
If France win the first game against New Zealand, I think that sets the tone. I think they're the best team in the world.
I'm going to go Ireland. I'm going to get off the fence once and for all. This is our best chance to win.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
I was well impressed with Galway's progress last season. The questions you asked about them, Cian O'Neill factor, the defensive structure they brought in, Shane Walsh, and you see what he's doing with Crokes now. He's like, it's like he nearly finally believes in himself that he's one of the best players in the country, because he is. The Comer conundrum, I'm sure they would have looked at that All-Ireland final and said, look, we can't have this. If we want Shane Walsh to be brilliant, Comer has to sacrifice. I don't think he can afford to do that. I think Finnerty will be better this season as well, and they'll take huge confidence from last season. But also, yeah, I'm sure they would have. Knowing Divo and those guys, yeah, it was a good year and there was progress. But I'd still think they're fairly pissed off that they didn't win the All-Ireland final. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they're going away patting themselves in the back going, we're delighted. They'll be hurting from that as well. So I think Galway will have a big say again this year. I would have them as the best team in Connacht. Not by much, I agree, Jimmy, but I think they'll have a say in the championship.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Yeah, approaching 8:10 on this Wednesday morning. It's OTB AM. Tommy Rooney, very good morning.
Shane, good morning.
Tommy, you have a tough job here. You've got big shoes to fill. I understand you sought out the permission of our fine friend Owen Sheehan to take over the mantle.
I did. Do you want me to read our WhatsApps?
Please do. This is of course the GAA Power Rankings, and Tommy Rooney is taking over from Owen Sheehan.
It's legal.
I don't know if this is, yeah.
There's a new sheriff in town. Yeah, unfortunately I can't screen record, but I said, listen, Owen, hope all is well. The lads have been on. They're asking me to take over the Power Rankings. I said I wouldn't do it unless I spoke to you first. And he got back and he said, you're asking a man who was in an Uber to a Medland Techno Club for advice. Best of luck. There you go. So
then
he rang me from the club.
That's where Pablo Escobar was from.
I got all the secret sauce. I found out how the fig roll was made. Basically, Owen Sheehan was making it up as he went along.
Well, I think Owen has had plenty of secret sauce wherever he is right now, but
yeah, well, that won't be happening.
More sense than generally.
Yeah, I mean, how many days later did he reply to you, Tommy?
I got back straight away.
Oh, straight away.
Back straight away. Yeah. He wanted to pass on I think it was weighing heavy on his shoulders, the Power Rankings and kind of where he had left things. So look, I'm taking it on. I'm taking it seriously.
Yeah.
There's I'd be a bit more into the data and the analytical bits and pieces that make counties tick. So this is going to be absolutely correct. There's going to be no swaying me here, and I think we're on to a good one.
Jesus, yeah. I was going to say, well, between the Power Rankings and the crappy quiz, I'd say that added years to Owen Sheehan's life and took away from his life expectancy. But I mean, we've passed that mantle over to you now, Tommy. I haven't looked. I don't think Nathan has either. So neither of us have. We've both opted not to look at your list.
Without looking, who do you think would be higher in the rankings, Mayo or Monaghan?
Oh, Mayo, I'd say.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Jesus, yeah, Mayo. No, that's with Oisin Mullen and Lee Keegan out the gap. So I'm intrigued to see where Monaghan are. Of course, they'll have to be, Tommy, in the top 8, given they're a Division 1 team. New management, new start, good young players coming through. Manzi committing for the year. Go on.
Before we start complaining, will we just get into it?
Go on. We'll start with, so what is it, 32 to 25?
Yeah, we're going from 32 to 25. Now, this is obviously quite a few counties in Division 4, but we'll run through it. So 32nd, Waterford. No win in Division 4 last year. No win in Munster. No win in the Tottenham Cup in 2022. They started their league with a draw versus Tip, but it just didn't improve after that. They are rooted to the bottom of the table here, unfortunately, and hopefully we'll see them move up the Power Rankings with a few more wins this year. 31, Wicklow. Intriguing move getting Oisin McConville involved. It is interesting down this side of the table, lads. Kevin O'Brien produced one of the performances of the championships last year, a hat-trick against Laois in a great win in Leinster for Wicklow. They were beaten then by Meath before they won their Tottenham Cup opener to Waterford and lost to Offaly. 30th, Wexford. New management team with John Hegarty in charge. Shane Roach stepped in after Galvin walked away. A respectable enough tenure, but football just isn't catching fire in Wexford at the minute, and they are in the bottom 3. In Carlow, Niall Quinn is the boss. It feels like it's a long way off that summer of 2017 when Carlow were rising and there was a bit of a buzz around the county. To be honest, I started doing this and I was regretting my decision to even have them so high, but they had a good win in the Tottenham Cup last year, 2 strong wins, a good performance versus the winners Westmeath in the quarter-final. Went under the radar a little bit how well they did, and they have a couple of really good players there in Jordan Morrissey, who'll be the heartbeat of that team. 28, London, one of the stories of the season last year early on. A little bit like Armagh. They were the rock stars early on. They had a couple of big results. I'll be honest, I don't really know what their squad is like this year, so they're one of those counties I'm going to have to watch. But Michael Maher is back in charge and a very highly rated young manager. 27th, Laois. Sad sight seeing a team like this down so far. They've obviously lost Ross Munnelly in the winter, a legend of the game, one of the longest service players that we'd seen. Billy Sheehan is still in charge. One good sign for Laois. It can only get better from here. And they've had the Port Arlington players back, the county champions for the last 3 years. A lot of the counties down this side of their rankings can't get their best players on the pitch. So they had 4 or 5 in the mix in the Burn Cup. So that's good to see. 26th place, Longford. They were blessed last year not to be relegated. They're in Division 3. They're the lowest Division 3 side here. Paddy Christie has come in. He's combining that role with the DCU Sigerson job. I think it could be a good fit. And they've flatlined a little bit for the last 2 years, so I think they're on the way up. Number 25, Leitrim. They got the Andy Moran bounce last year. There was a real vibrancy and excitement around the county. You could see it in any of their games. They wanted to get the Croke Park in the Tailteann Cup last year. They didn't get there. Lost an epic penalty shootout to Sligo in Carrick and Shannon, which is absolutely hopping. We'll see what happens. They'll be targeted in Division 4. Themselves and Sligo were unlucky last year. Cavan and Tip went straight back up. So if they can get out of Division 4 this year, you'll see them moving up the power rankings.
The only things
any arguments?
No, I agree with you. I think Longford will finish higher than 26th by the end of the year. I think Paddy Christie's going to do good things, and they've had a good pre-season. My only question, I suppose, on Leitrim is, are you biased? Like, will you feel a pressure to have Leitrim higher because of your links to Andy Moran? Like, is there, like, you know, Andy's going to be watching, so are you going to feel like you have to put him higher regardless of how they play?
It's Ireland, Shane. If we were to do everything here based off links and connections and people we knew and where we had relations, I'd be in big bother.
Fair point.
So, the answer is no.
There.
No, I think it's interesting. I'd be interested to see where Sligo are, because one of Sligo or Leitrim are going to end up in the All-Ireland series, and it'd be fascinating to see by the time we get to the 16 teams that are in that All-Ireland series where Leitrim and Sligo are.
24-17 then, Tommy?
Yeah, it's a very good point, and that's where we're going to start with Sligo, 24th. Right. They had a decent 2022. They played in Croker, unlucky not to get out of Division 4. This year, I think they will. Again, similar to Laois and a couple of other counties, very few players from the county champions, Turlestran. I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's 7 of the last 8, could be 6 of the last 7. In the panel that's been announced by Tony McEntee, shout out to the Sligo PRO, Padraig McKeown. Like, he sent us the 38-man panel. He told us where the clubs were. He let us know who Tony McEntee had picked. Obviously, Tony McEntee gave the thumbs up, but that's great. We need a bit more of that. We need to know who the players are, where they're from, and we could do a pen picks on what makes them tick as well. We'd all love that. But I think Nathan's really right. I'm not sure how much that Connacht side of the draw is going to help those teams. Personally, I feel, look at what Westmeath did, look at the bounce they've got. Wait till you see where Westmeath are. That is what they need. A bit of a Tailteann Cup run against similar opposition, getting good competitive games, but that's an argument for another day. Sligo have Niall Murphy, which is why they are above the other teams in Division 4, one of the best players in the grade down there. So, number 23, Antrim, Andy Mackey's in charge. I might get Nice there to hurry up a little bit, because I will, if that's the case. Impressive first year for McGinley.
Well spotted.
McGinley and O'Neill. Poor last year, though, and it tailed off under the lads. So, will they get a manager bounce? I'm not sure every county can get a manager bounce, but we'll see what happens here. They were very poor against Cavan in the championship. Nearly turned Paddy Anders off football, which is saying something. 22nd for Mana. Kieran Donnelly, another one of the young managers. A lot of young managers in the mix this year, lads. There's 14 new managers, so I am not going to say that every county's getting a manager bounce. 14 new managers, 9 of them are taking over a county team for the first time. So, it's going to get a lot of new ideas, hopefully. So Kieran Donnelly's second year, it's a decent Fermanagh team. They're young. He's putting a stamp on it. They're in transition though. They stayed in Division 3 last year. They lost to Tyrone before a win and a loss in the Tailteann Cup. Offaly are 21st. I think Offaly could be in a spot of bother this year. Disappointed with them last year. To watch them live a few times. I think that the under 20 talent is there, but I still think it needs another year. Some serious quality, but there's just not enough. Liam Kearns has taken over them, so I think they're definitely going to be in the lower half of Division 3, which is a dangerous place to be. 20th place, down. Now, I want to put an asterisk here. I don't want to talk down up too much, but down are a type of county that I get excited by. I love the football of the early 90s, lads, and having Down come back means that we're going to have Cork back, and it means that we're going to have Meath back. And that is why I want, once one of them start coming back, the others will come follow suit.
Well, Derry are back as well. Yeah, it is really a 90s nostalgia. And Manchester United and Arsenal back in the Premier League. This is nostalgia central that recent weeks. Love it.
And what did Mayo do in the 90s?
Lost a few All-Ireland finals, the usual.
Lost a few All-Ireland finals. Okay,
Down.
A
few brawls.
Of all the counties in this tier, I'm most excited for the potential Down have, and it's because things have gotten so bad when they didn't have to. The wheels fell off the Paddy Tally rain. It should have been better. Year 1 was good. Year 2, COVID hit. Year 3 was just a disaster. And last year was even worse for Down. James McCartan was in. Fallouts of the players. Issues with training weekends in Dublin where there was a couple of discipline issues with drinking and stuff. It all kind of fell apart. So Conor Laverty's taken charge probably a little earlier than he would have wanted, but Conor Laverty has been shaping himself for this job for a long time. He's been coaching for years. He's been involved in Trinity and clubs and counties in the background, quietly building up his reputation and his resume. So early days, he did very well with the down under 20s. He's combining that role, I believe. So there's a lot on his plate this year. But interestingly, he's not taking on the media duties. You won't see Conor Laverty chatting to the media. Mickey Donnelly has been doing that. He's been out in front of the McKenna Cup after McKenna Cup game. So keep an eye on down. Their Ulster Championship openers against Donegal. I don't want to put it out there,
it's a big
but
one.
That's depending on where those teams meet, going up and down the hill. That's a big one. Tipperary are 19th. I think Tip football is in a bit of bother. Such a glorious win in 2020, and things just haven't clicked since then. Like many of the counties in this half of the table, they can't get the best players on the pitch. Conor Reardon further with the idea of staying around. He's gone back to Australia. Michael Quinnivan hasn't committed. 2 footballers to start from nearly every county in the country. Louder 18th, Samuel Roy, Mickey Hart. I wanted to have them a bit higher up, but if they can back up their big talk with performances and results, they'll be flying up the tables here. Limerick are ahead of them in 17th. Billy Lee is a loss, but maybe that was as good as it was going to get for Limerick. Ray Dempsey is in. Interesting to see how close he was to the Mayo job. They need a competitive Division 2, and if they do get that, they're going up the table. They're 17th because they got to the Munster final last year.
I like it so far. Yeah, it's hard to argue when there hasn't been much football, but so far, no arguments.
It's the easiest one of the year.
Exactly, yeah, because the rest of them will be debated hotly. 16-9, Tommy, so we have a bit of time on the top 8.
I've been watching all the preseason game, boys. That's why it's easy. I know I'm right. That is the thing. 16th, Cavan. I'm putting a lot of stock in that 2020 win. Nightmare 2021. They did all they could in 2022. The top Division 4. They ran Donegal close. They lost a tight Tailteann Cup final. And there's plenty of quality there. Another promotion in the bag. It's a dangerous year, though. Mickey Graham's there a couple of years. There was a bit of talk that there might be a change this year. There's not. So we'll see what Cavan happen. Meath, 15th. Might be lower than you might have expected, but I can't really make a case for Meath. O'Rourke is starting from a low base here in terms of the energy and the quality in the squad, and that's where it is. There'll be lots of time to argue about Meath later in the year when they fly up the rankings with a couple of wins, but I'm leaving them in 15th. 14th, Quirke. If anyone listened to the football pod yet, I'm not going to blame you for not listening so far because it's only out about 36 hours, but yeah, you'd know who James O'Donoghue's team to pick for 2023 was. He said Quirke. I can't get my head around it, but he has big Quirke up massively for this year.
That's based on one game in the McGrath Cup?
That's based on him being a Kerry man and then begging Kerry to have a bit of competition, a bit more competition in Munster. So,
but they don't want competition in Munster now, Kerry, because the All-Ireland series means they'll get enough tough games
I don't know, Nathan,
ahead of an All-Ireland quarter-final, semi-final.
Just mind games, that's all it is.
You tell me what the motivation is to have Quirke so featured in his teams to watch in 2023. And do you know what? The lads called it right last year. James's team was Derry, Paddy's team was Galway. So, 13th, I thought your Gilroy would be here to be giving out Kildare. They're 13th. What have they done to be any higher? They've lost multiple Leinster finals. They've beaten Dublin and Newbridge. Grant.
Big wins against Monaghan, Dublin, Kerry in the league last year. Probably could have stayed up in Division 1, but didn't. Yeah, league. But league's important now.
League is important, but I'm just going to say league schmeek. 12th. This is what I think about the league. The Tailteann Cup winners are 12th. Now, I obviously love the league, but the Tailteann Cup winners are 12th. There's a serious buzz. They have a new manager. They've won silverware over the last couple of years. That's what I mean by doing something. If they win Division 3, I'd back them to make a Leinster final. They're on the same side as Meath and Louth and Offaly, and I think Longford.
But Tommy, you're not massively underestimating that they've won the Tailteann Cup because they were one of the lower ranked teams, and there's such a massive difference between the quality of Division 1, Division 2, that teams that have played in Division 1, Division 2 just have something in them that will always have them a step ahead. Yes, Westmeath are on the right track, but are they a better team right now than Meath?
I think they are. I think when you've seen Westmeath's performances against Kildare in the last 2 years, they've been really... They should have beaten Kildare the last 2 years.
But they didn't.
Yeah, but they've gone and they've done something. They've won something. And you can't underestimate... Like, those lads went to Mexico together on a team holiday. You can't talk about how that bonds a team. So there you go. That's given Westmeath extra kudos, extra bonus, and I just think they've delivered. So it's a team as well that have won a couple of league titles over the years. So I'm putting Westmeath there.
Fair.
You can argue with me all you want. I know you're trying to argue with me, but there you go.
Wouldn't be like Nathan at all.
11th, Clare. Couple of big retirements. The youth there is going to need a bit of time, but I think they're going to have a solid Division 2 again. James and Paddy were questioning that a little bit on the football pod, but I think there's a strong team there. 11th position. 10th. This is where it gets interesting. You can obviously see it on screen. Monaghan.
To be honest, I'm not going to argue too much. I'd probably have Monaghan at the moment ahead of Donegal, and that's the only other team I'd have them ahead of.
Donegal.
I think Donegal are on a downward curve. Monaghan potentially on a less downward spiral. But I just think Donegal, with the loss of Murphy and new manager, I know Monaghan have a new manager as well, but look, remains to be seen. Monaghan could win the Ulster Championship, lads. You never know.
Oh Jesus!
We didn't have Clare on our screen, by the way. So your new adopted county is not on the graphic. So I know it's not your fault.
Tommy had to get the balance right between putting Clare high enough that he didn't insult Colm Collins, but also not high enough that Colm Collins mightn't think, well, maybe I could do with a bit of a change and get a good lad from one of the clubs in at some stage during the season.
So
brings us to the top 8, Tommy. The sexy part.
We're moving on. So we're moving past Monaghan and Roscommon.
No, he's comfortable. Monaghan are uninteresting, so move on.
For now,
Monaghan are interesting.
That's the way I want to have it.
Very worrying how long it took to get a manager. Vinnie Corey's in. Yeah, exactly. Number 8, Donegal. Donegal on paper, they are the best team in the country on paper.
What?
They are in. It's a joke. They're just, everyone has backed Donegal over the last couple of years to win games because on paper they look better than they are. They just haven't delivered under Declan Bonner. Murphy is left. Catastrophic loss. You're right, Shane. They could be in serious danger, and I do think they're in danger. They're 8 though, because on paper they've got some super footballers.
Okay.
And
no one's ever won a trophy on paper. I'd like to see it happen.
7th place, Tyrone. I'm expecting them to bounce back. Last year was a blip. It was a bad year. The talent is there. I know I've got the 2021 All-Ireland champions in 7th place.
Yeah, but if you're saying it's a blip and you expect them to bounce back, how do you have them below Derry and Armagh?
I think they won an All-Ireland in 2021 out of nowhere. And I think that the other two teams are in a better position to capitalise. I think
a fluky All-Ireland, is that what you're saying?
I just think that it was Mayo's to win and Mayo's lost it. So, I just think that Tyrone, if you look at where Mayo are compared to where Tyrone are, I just think Tyrone, I'm giving them a chip on their shoulder early in the year. That's what we need. We need another contender. We'll see them come back. If the Cannibals deliver, Tyrone will be in 3rd place. But it's hard to know whether they can do it on the intercounty stage.
But have they not shown that they can do it on the intercounty stage? And that's the entire reason they should be above, like Armagh in particular.
It's just that team.
The big championship games, Armagh haven't done it. They've almost done it. They've almost got there. But Tyrone have actually done it. And their history says that, yes, they have their down years, and maybe they weren't the best team in the All-Ireland series the year they won it. Maybe some other county should have won it, but, history went against them yet again.
But they were the best team.
7th place for a team that won the All-Ireland just over a year ago, and have proven that they can win these sort of tight encounters when they're at it, when they're fully focused.
When they're at it, yeah, but it's just that team that won in 2021 had a savage level of competition in that squad. They lost 6 players. There was issues last year. I'm just not convinced that that's all been shedded, and I just need to see them in action. It was a blip, but it was an alarming enough blip last year as well.
We're running out of time, Tommy, but you might run us through the top teams.
6th, Derry. They won the Ulster title last year, but I have them down here because to get to that next level is obviously fine margins, but to get to the next level, we're going to have to see something different. Very interested to see what Gallagher does. I'd imagine he's going to target Division 2 this year. They've got the Derry title. They need to get to Division 1 to get that bit higher. And it's top level stuff here, so it is really fine margins. Mayo were 5th. I don't know whether you think I've them too high, Nathan, but semi-finalists quarterfinals last year, consistency over the last couple of years, getting a lot of stock. Sure, they had injuries last year, but they've got players back. And the players they've lost in Mullen and Keegan, they've regained in Ryan O'Donoghue, Cillian O'Connor being fit this year, and Tommy Conroy hopefully being back to the levels they were at in 2021. There's a depth there. McStay is going to bring a new style, a new flavour, some new footballers. It'll be interesting to see it. I think they're going to get it.
Converted here, Tommy. I'm excited just listening to you. I'll take 5th.
Top 4 semi-finalists for the All-Ireland. Who are they, Tommy?
Top 4. I'm putting Armagh in there, Shane. And people may...
but you see, you're Armagh 4th because you are the leader of the cult of Kieran McGeeney.
That's not true. That is not true. I am no leader of any cult, but
no leader of men.
I do love the way Armagh play football, but I also do think that they were the 4th best team in the country last year. They lost on penalties to Galway. They had delivered time after time in Division 1 of the league. They had a blip against Donegal, but that was a blip. That was a moment. That was one issue, and they fixed it all, and they destroyed Tyrone and Donegal in the qualifiers. They should have beaten Galway. I don't think Derry laid a hand on Galway. But I'm just comparing it to the Derry defeat to Galway. I think Derry looked a little limited against Galway. Armagh took charge and took over. Galway, 3rd place. Runners up last year, breakout year. The individuals they have are exceptional, and they've got Cook, Peter Cook and Ian Burke back. So when Tyrone have lost the depth, Galway have added depth. And that is why they're third, and they could very easily be first this year. Second place, Dublin. Such fine margins to that Sean O'Shea free. They still should have beaten Kerry without Conor Callaghan. Kerry were probably a little blessed. The hunger's going to be there. They didn't even play their second team in the O'Byrne Cup. They played their third team because the first team and the second team are being dogged through an absolutely insane pre-season. They must be doing it out in Innisfields or somewhere where the Indo can't get photos of them. But the Dubs are on their way back. McCaffrey and Mannion will be flying come championship, and I think the Dubs are going to have a lot to say this year in the championship. Kerry are number 1, clean sweep in 22. They've the Cliffords, they've Jack. I do think they will have a poor league. I'm not sure how Jack O'Connor will manage this chase for back-to-backs. I have my doubts. But that is the 2023 official power rankings. Sorry for running so
No, listen,
over time.
the best part of those power rankings was the fact that Roscommon are such an irrelevance. You didn't even mention them. They're such an irrelevance. Such an irrelevance that you didn't even mention.
I know a few Roscommon lads that would not be happy with that, but anyway,
Well,
listen.
look, my mommy's from Roscommon, so I'll get in trouble here. But look, my thing about Roscommon is they're 9th. They're above Monaghan. I think that they are possibly bouncing back down to Division 2 next year. There's a bit of a yo-yo effect there. They may have peaked with what they have, and they might have to build again. Same with Monaghan, build again with some of the youth coming through for their next charge at maybe, what's the tops they're going to get? An All-Ireland semi-final?
Possibly.
It's just the way things are.
Tommy, great first episode, and I'll tell you what, that's the only episode of the year where there'll be no arguments, I would have to say.
Yeah.
So enjoy it while it lasts. But Tommy, great stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads. Cheers. Talk soon.
Of course, listen to the football pod as well with Tommy and Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue, wherever you get it. But at 8:31 a.m, and Keith Wood has been waiting very patiently on the line. Morning, Keith.
Morning, gents. How are you?
Keeping well.
He gets very excited, you know.
Well, he's living down in Clare there, so I'm sure it's there's something in the water that gets him excited down below. You know yourself. Listen, the Eddie Jones stuff. What's going on here? Dave Rennie, a lot of people feel a little bit sorry for him. The timing has got a lot of people talking. World Cup year, but the fact that he was talking to them for 14 months, Keith, behind England's backs, this is mad stuff, isn't it?
Well, I think Rennie was under a huge amount of pressure. I think there were a lot of conversations over the last period of time because of the losses. Now, if you look at Australian rugby, and more, I think, than any other country, if Australia don't play well, people are able to walk away in droves. I mean, the Australian crowds they're not fickle, but they have an expectation of success, and if the success isn't there, they don't support it. I mean, they become incredibly aggressive with it, and I think that was happening for a while. And I do feel the players were behind Dave Rennie, but I just think when the opportunity arose with Eddie Jones, that Australian rugby were going to go for it because. And I know the conversations have been there for a while, but the conversations were for him to take over as director of rugby for Australian rugby post the 23 World Cup. It wasn't for a conversation beforehand. I think most people will be having conversations to what they're going to do in the future. So I think we can go for conspiracy theories very quickly, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case. However, when they do get him, and they have got him, I expect them to get a bounce pretty quickly. And he has a history of delivering in the short to medium term in pretty much every team he's ever gone to. And look, I think he kind of breaks everybody after about 2 years, but in that 2-year period, he could do amazing things. So I would have said it was an incredibly smart piece of business on behalf of Australia, because they get a guy who has huge rugby capital, has been ousted from a team, in the same group, will have an awful lot of the IP of the team and the players in his arsenal for them. I think it's fantastic business for Australia, and it's whether he's able to keep that for a longer period of time, because consistently, I think he kind of loses patience after a couple of years. But this is 9 months he has first, and I think he could do a really good job.
The severance package or lack of a clause from the RFU in the severance package with Eddie Jones to prevent him coaching rivals. The RFU saying they didn't adopt that package for legal and moral reasons. I mean, is this going to be a lesson, Keith, do you think, for for other rugby unions, international rugby unions, to stop this kind of thing happening again in a World Cup year?
Yeah, it's funny. I looked at that phraseology of legal and moral reasons. For legal reasons, if it's in the contract, that if they do get rid of him, but they got rid of him, he didn't walk away. So for that, it becomes quite hard for them to tie him down. And his team did a great job. That's the way I would look at it. They did a great job. But funny, I get stuck on this myself often because you would think in a lot of cases that if you lose a job, people still have to work, still have to make money, and still have bills to pay, a whole variety of different things. You can't really, or you don't really want to restrain them. I think it's unusual in this instance because it looks a little bit wrong. But I think they've just done his guys have just done a very good job with him to make certain that he is employable very quickly. Putting in elements are difficult. The moral side of it is an entertaining view, but I think he has. He came out and said he wouldn't talk to any of the England people if he met them now. Like, he's so bitter with it. I just hope we don't get into this other slagging match that happens consistently. I mean, we don't want the game necessarily being about a coach talking and, bad mouthing other players or other individuals or other countries. We want to see it to be about the rugby if at all possible. And it can be entertaining in the short term, but after a bit of period of time it becomes a bit tedious. So look, I hope he just gets on with the idea. If he brings back a lot of players that have been injured in Australia are on the right side of the draw. They have a history of competing incredibly well in World Cups. I think they'll do a really good job.
Eddie Jones has come back to bite Australia many, many times since he went to England, as 10 wins in their 11 tests against Australia. Culture fit wise, like Eddie Jones, the last year, the amount of stories that have come out about his relationships with other staff members, there was talk of leaving players in tears. Is he a better culture fit for Australian rugby, that abrasiveness, than he was in England?
I think he's a great fit in the short term for nearly any country. I think he can shake things up very quickly. I think when it looks, for me, when I look back in his time in England, I think he used too many players and he brought them in very early, whether it was on a whim or not, but they got discarded very early. You look at Steve Borthwick's first squad and there has to be an awful lot of what was there because they did picked everybody in the country pretty much. But when you see a player like Ben Earl, who is pulling up trees and has done consistently, and he hasn't had a look in for the last number of years. So I think in a short term, I think he's extraordinary, actually. In a long term, I think at times he's given too much power to be able to do different things. And I think we discussed this a couple of weeks ago just on players. If you fall out of favour with a coach, your career is very, very short as a player. If you fall out of favour with a coach, and that coach is there for a long period of time, you mightn't be an international player, and look, I think he'll do, I believe he'll do an extraordinary job. I think he'll make it incredibly difficult for England when it comes to World Cup time.
Like, when you say he'd be a good short-term fit for any country, Keith, to play devil's advocate, it's not that long ago that there were boos in Twickenham and everyone's calling for his head, and it's the worst time that England have had in years, certainly under Jones's tenure. And often when Australia go back to another manager years later, I think he left in 2005, it's almost like the second coming of Jose Mourinho. Maybe it won't be as good as the first time. Like, is there added pressure on Eddie Jones?
Well, again, he said he thinks he's one big job left in him. This is his home. He gets an opportunity to be the coach of the World Cup and then to go for another World Cup and Alliance Tour. For me, I think that's an awkward one for him because I don't know that he has the amount of players in Australia to be able to sustain that for that period of time. But if you go back to the start of his English career and the first couple of years, he won a Grand Slam in the Championship, won 18 matches on the trot, which is a world record. he has that capacity to shake things up very, very quickly. Whether he'll be able to do it, that's entirely difficult, or difficult to kind of surmise. Look, I'd spoken to some of the Australians before the Australia game. I had a really interesting conversation as to where they think they were going and they were trying to go. For them, they need winning, and they need to be financially secure as well as possible. There's the benefit of the Lions Tour going down there. And the reason that that's a benefit is that it puts a huge amount of money in their coffers, and they need it. So it's kind of at that right time to be able to make those things. It won't be as kind of flahuluk as it was with the money in England, where a lot of his programs went over budget. It'll be tighter, but I actually think there can be an Eddie Jones bounce.
Okay, remains to be seen. We'd love to see that England-Australia match-up in the knockout rounds of the World Cup. It'll be juicy anyway, entertaining as you say as well, Keith. The Irish squad being named tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We've had our own Cameron Hill on the show this morning, given quite an interesting suggestion that maybe Ross Byrne and Jack Crowley could be alternating number 10s throughout the Six Nations, and Johnny Sexton will be given a rest. Do you expect any mad surprises along those lines in the squad and then in the selection from Andy Farrell ultimately?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything mad, actually, and I think one thing Andy Farrell has been is incredibly consistent with his selection, and he understands, I think, very keenly that international rugby is about winning. It is about trying to develop a performance mindset, which I think they have done. I think they played incredibly well in the autumn, got the results, played well, didn't play well in some, weren't overly happy with it. Finding out a lot about his players. Ross Byrne is playing a bit better, I think. And I do see a few changes in him. But again, we like this is like a perennial conversation with Johnny Sexton as to who's going to take the jersey off him, because he's not relinquishing it.
Is the big disappointment, Keith, that again Joey Carberry at the weekend, fortnight out from the Six Nations, isn't putting in a performance that you're going, actually this guy on form needs to start? That you're looking at the performance last weekend, and there were good bits, and obviously they're start the game brilliantly and struggle after the red card. But was that a commanding enough performance that Andy Farrell sitting up going, well, actually, I don't need to rush Johnny back?
No, but I don't think it was a performance to say that you have to pick him ahead of Johnny. It wasn't. I thought he played pretty well, but I think he stalled somewhat. I think that ankle injury for him took an awful lot out of him over the last few years. I do think he, again, we discussed this last week, I actually think he plays better for Ireland than he does with Munster, with, better players around him that are used to playing at a higher level. I think he actually does play well with it. Again, I just don't know that anybody is putting Johnny under that amount of pressure. And look, we've talked about this a lot, but I still think that the manner in which Ireland are playing, and Leinster for a large part, protects the 10 a lot more. But you do need the capacity to hit the line fast from time to time. That isn't happening as much with any of our 10s. So while that continues to be the case, it actually puts Ross Byrne further up the pecking order. And I still think, as it stands at the moment, Ross Byrne is there. Joey is there, and Crowley is getting the chances now. And the more Crowley plays, the better chance he has. The more they get exposure at international level, the better it is. But we still want to try and win this tournament. But it's whether you just drop somebody in entirely and risk losing. But I think we dropped guys in the autumn and we didn't lose. So look, I think you're looking at the whole board as much as you possibly can and play the players that you have to maximise what we have for now and for the World Cup. And that's a balancing act that Farrell has to deal with.
I think Gavin Coombs said not being in the November international squad was a bit of a kick up the arse for him. And I mean, if you look at his performances now, Keith, maybe it was the kick up the arse that he 100% needed. Like the likes of him, someone massively in form. Like, do you include the likes of Gavin Coombs? Is he someone on the edge of the squad, or where would you see his ceiling being at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think he's got a very high ceiling. He also was injured. He's it takes a while to come back from injury as well. His form had dipped. He didn't look fit enough, and like that isn't for a guy not looking after himself for fitness. But fitness can be injury and anything else as well that goes with it. But I think he's playing really, really well in the style that Munster need him to play well at, but he's doing a huge amount of work now. And I think if you look at his work rate at the moment, it seems to be a lot higher. So obviously people are going to talk about him more. But I would say Caelan Dars is magnificent at the moment. So, but what you're always looking for are changes in the team. So what way are we going to be set? Are we always going to have Peter O'Mahony type 6, and if not, if we go for more power in different matches, you could end up with Gavin Coombs at 6, and fine, because like we need players coming from, and actually you need players coming from every province. There's Leinster doing incredibly well, and there's so many players coming from Leinster. It's fantastic, but you do need the blend from different places, and you need the different types of player. And I will say Gavin Coombs is different. His ability to short carry and power over, and that's an essential part of the game, is pretty phenomenal. His strike rate is incredible for Munster at the moment.
The overall balance of the squad then that'll be named tomorrow. We were talking about Jamie Osborne's performance on Monday, and Rory O'Connor was saying like maybe it's just that little bit too late to make a run towards the squad now, 8 months out. And there's players like Conor Murray and Keith Earls who didn't make the Munster squad but have so much money in the bank when it comes to what they've done for Ireland through the years. Are we heading to the stage actually where it is too late for bolters, that the Jimmy O'Brien got in just in time, and that the Conor Murrays and Keith Earls and Bundy Aki, who I know Andy Friend has backtracked maybe somewhat on what was said at the weekend, that those guys have done it for their country, and that's probably the first thing Andy Farrell will be thinking about now?
Well, Farrell thinks about his team. He's not really thinking about the other teams. I know when he says he picks players on form, he can also go back to what happened in the autumn. For me, Osborne, it isn't too late, actually. If he is showing a size and a capability and a stepping capability that we can definitely use. That's the way I would look at it. So if I was Farrell, I would have him in the squad, because he's going to learn an awful lot in the squad anyway. And if the chance comes and you can pick him, you pick him. We've had a lot of injuries in 12. Look, I think Gary Ringrose has been playing phenomenal rugby, like a really fantastic season. Henshaw has been injured. Bundy has been in and out with suspension and bits of injuries as well. We have to see who we have at our disposal. If this is the next guy on the line, we need to see him in the squad. So no, I don't think it's too late ever. Because what you're looking for is a spark, and are they able to be manoeuvred into the system? Because that's what you need to be able to do. Farrell needs to know that if you bring a new guy in, that he doesn't dismantle parts of the system to make that happen. And I think he seems to have the aptitude in which to do it, which is more on a lot of injuries, and now he's playing. So you have to give these guys a chance. When they play really well, you have to give them a chance,
Yeah, for sure. Going to be very interesting to see if we have any surprise omissions or inclusions in tomorrow's squad around this time tomorrow. Keith, brilliant insight as always. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Cheers, gents.
Thanks,
Great stuff. 8:48 a.m. on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM. Delighted to say John Duggan joins us back in studio. John, what do we think of Tottenham, as the Arsenal fans would sing?
Soulless, utterly soulless, and it's all over.
Oh, John. Jeez, I've never heard John as demoralised talking about Tottenham. This is a sad day.
Yeah, it's.
I know you're an actor. You went to the GAA School of Acting, so maybe you're putting on a little show for us here.
Maybe I am. But it was just no fight in the North London derby. When you compare it to last May, when they battered Arsenal, beat them 3-0, you can really see the divergence in the way both teams have progressed or regressed. And it's just worrying that Conte even coming out yesterday and saying that other people should be coming out and explaining the situation, whether it's sporting directors or medical staff, and that it almost seems that sometimes when I hear him, he's coming across like he's almost feels like he's doing Spurs a favour by being there, which isn't good. I don't think we have the players to fit into a system. And I think that, as I've said before many times, I think the club has been taken as far as it can be by the current ownership. And they need maybe to realise that the fact that they've turned a club they bought for 20 million quid into a 2 billion business, that it might be just time now to move on, because they're caught between a rock and a hard place of being a club that has a project manager in Conte but doesn't have the personnel to fulfil that project, as was the case with Jose. And when they did have a project manager like Pochettino to build for the long term, they didn't back him in the transfer market. I know they were building the stadium, so they're caught between having a guy that is going to come in to do a short-term job to win trophies but don't have the playing personnel, and he's not committed beyond the end of this season, and I can just see this ending in quite a quick divorce, you know.
Are Tottenham better than 5th?
No.
Then you should be quite happy, achieving exactly what they should be. Only 5 points off United, albeit they've played a game more.
Well, this was a club that was 2nd and 3rd and was always in the Champions League places under Pochettino. That pipped Arsenal to the Champions League spot last season, and now is just stalling, whereas Arsenal are flourishing, even with the fact that they've got quite a threadbare squad, Arsenal. So Liverpool and Chelsea have got problems at the moment, but they're not going to have problems forever. And Newcastle look here to stay. United are playing really well under Ten Hag, and the top 4 look set to me at the moment.
There are a lot of players in that Tottenham squad that are sort of 5th to 8th place players.
Yeah.
Like Højbjerg is a very, very nice central midfielder, but is he absolutely world class? Like was Basuma, maybe at Brighton you thought he could make that step. Certainly haven't seen it as of yet. Ryan Sessegnon hasn't really kicked on.
No.
Matt Doherty's arguably in that sort of category as well. Likewise, maybe Romero is the one with the highest ceiling as a centre back, but would any of those other centre backs get in Liverpool, Manchester City, Chelsea, Arsenal squad right now? Our team, probably not. And obviously the goalkeeper is just
was he at fault?
Disaster.
His first goal took a deflection.
He's probably at fault because he's been at fault for so many other situations. And look, Philippe Auclair was on Monday night and he made a good point that Hugo Lloris has just retired from international football, that emotionally this is a huge thing for him, and we forget that for Hugo Lloris, actually playing for his country is the most important thing in his career, and actually that's a good thing. That's a good thing in football. It's not a great thing if you're a Tottenham fan, but his main focus of his career has always maybe been peaking and being at his absolute best when he's at France, and maybe he has that short attention span. He can do it for a quick four-week tournament, but week in, week out, there's definitely a sloppiness to him that has always held people back from saying he's one of the best goalkeepers in the world, when at international level he clearly has been.
Well, the mistakes are more and more frequent, Nathan, and his distribution is questionable. He was at fault, in my mind, for the goal. And then what does that instill in his own defenders? I think when you're looking at Spurs, I don't want to be moaning here because it's the same old almost debate with Tottenham, but is Longley good enough? Is Dyer good enough? Is Ben Davies good enough for a top 4 team? So you're looking at a goalkeeper and possibly 2 of the 3 defenders not being good enough. Basuma, as you said, came for over 30 million, hasn't worked out. Højbjerg, fine. Then Sessegnon, there's a degree of headless chicken about him. The other day he was getting into good positions but wasn't delivering the end product. I think Doherty is a player that I don't think will be around in Tottenham for much longer. Perisic is
still okay. He's
in good. Look, Matt Doherty's in very good form at the moment and has never let Spurs down. Generally, he goes through dips and falls out with the manager, it seems, and he's not quite convinced. And
he's honest. He's refreshingly honest.
Son is the shadow of what he was last season.
What's happened there?
I just think, is it a confidence thing? It seems to be that generally when you're looking at strikers, you're looking at confidence is the usual reason for it. Richarlison was bought and hasn't scored a goal in the Premier League, and I just don't know if Richarlison fits into the system because Richarlison, as we know, the World Cup played as a number 9, a target man, whereas he's not going to fill that position for Spurs. And I actually would feel quite sorry for Harry Kane, because at the moment Harry Kane is in a team that is not really serving how good he is. The
YouTube commenters are speaking, John. They're being very sympathetic, as you can imagine, as usually is the case with YouTube commenters. Barry Power says, who do Spurs fans think they are? They are a mid-ranking team, nothing more. Richard says Richard Redballs. In fact, I'll give him his full name. It's a great name. What I love the most about the Spurs situation is that when Conte was free, the world and his wife were calling for Conte to go to United. P-Well says Spurs have spent the last 10 years pushing for trophies and building themselves up, and now Arsenal come out of nowhere to stroll to the title. I know you tipped John quite heavily. Someone else is pointing out in the comments at the start of the year, Premier League predictions, Spurs were up there. But they can still get a top 4 finish.
That was another dud prediction.
No, John.
Well, I think it was after what we saw last year, and maybe this is the Conte way, and there's an Eddie Jones about it, that he goes in, makes an impact and falls out with everybody. I think if he was at Manchester United, that the investment he would have been allowed to make would have allowed him to improve that team, whereas like Tottenham are in that 30 to 40 million bracket when they're buying players again, which is not getting that very top level. And like Tottenham have been very fortunate over the last decade that they've basically created 2 generational players in their all-time leading scorer in Harry Kane and Gareth Bale, who became one of the best players in the world. The worry for Tottenham is if they stay under this ownership, like there's no guarantees you create another one of them. They're never going to buy one.
And also the recruitment has not been good. Like remember, when Dembele came in as the club's record signing was a flop. Lo Celso, Reguilon, all these players. And like since Paul Mitchell left the club, he went with Pochettino to Tottenham in 2014. Since he left the club, you'd have to question whether recruitment has been good enough. I think they struck it lucky with Pochettino, and then they didn't back him. They punched above their weight. Their wage structure is not as strong as the other clubs. But I do think whether the Qatar thing happens or not, it is time now for a change at the top, because Daniel Levy makes a decision now, gets rid of Conte. You could have Tuchel around there, or you could have Pochettino coming back, which would be a sugar high and it'd be good publicity. But would Daniel Levy, how would he appraise his own performance, given the amount of managers that have gone through the revolving door when they've won 1 trophy in over 20 years there, a League Cup? They won 2 League Cups in 30 years. I was going through, I think Arsenal won 14 trophies in that time. Chelsea more than that. And you're meant to be your rivals. So to me, it's just it is just completely a Groundhog Day situation.
It's not over yet. And they're 5 points behind Newcastle in third. And I wouldn't bet against Tottenham finishing above Newcastle this season. I still think Conte has shown consistently in the second half of the season that he can put a run together. And like Spurs are a strange team. They go through these spells of 3 games where they won't even have a shot on goal barely for 3 games. And then they'll go through a run of 5 or 6 games where they'll win 5 of them, and the confidence will be back, and Kane will be scoring, and you think it's all coming together, and then there'll be a dip again. But maybe they'll have enough of the good bits that actually they can go and somehow finish inside the top 4. But Conte just seems obsessed with going to war with the internal world of Tottenham, and like, what does that do to the players?
Well, also the fact that his wife and daughter are still in Italy is probably a sign. Maybe does he see this as something that he's going to stick around for? I think the next few weeks are crucial. And the worry I have, Nathan, on your point, is that they really they had no fight on Sunday. That first half, Arsenal were cruising, absolutely cruising.
He made it. I don't know if you saw the papers in his press conference yesterday. An interesting point again, where he was talking about. Why am I having to do all these media briefings? Why doesn't the doctor come out and explain why all these players are injured? Why doesn't the director of football come out and explain why we're not signing all these players? In every other country, everybody talks, and I have to do all the talking here, which would be a fascinating thing if suddenly the physio came out and the journalists are getting to hammer him about why aren't you doing your job properly?
Well, because himself and Paratici are buddies, so we haven't seen much of Paratici. But yeah, I just don't know where it's going. And I don't think they're great business people. They did a great job in the stadium and the training ground, but the football product has not lived up to their status as business people. And that's why I do think there needs to be a change. When you're looking at Ten Hag, the impact he's made, I think Newcastle is set here to stay. I think Eddie Howe's really, really good. And then you've got Arsenal and City. So, it's a perennial conversation we're having here on the same thing.
Jesus, John, I'm sorry to see you so sad. You're bringing me down here.
Well, Jesus. Your optimism is relentless, Shane, so I'm sure you'll get over it.
100%. I'll get over it very quickly. We'll have an optimistic slot tomorrow. We won't talk Spurs.
No, we'll talk about golf tipping.
Something exactly. Yeah, something happy. John, thanks a million. Lads. Great stuff. 8:50 AM on this Wednesday mornings. OTB AM. I don't know if you saw this, Nathan. We're currently watching the Australian Open. Coco Gauff, the 7th seed, 5-3 up against Emma Raducanu in the opening set. It's at deuce at the moment, and Gauff with the serve. So Gauff trying to close out that set. It's been a pretty entertaining set, to say the least. Advantage now to Gauff for her second set point. I just want to bring you a picture from Dan Evans, the British player, yesterday. Molly McElwee tweeting, Dan Evans' match was interrupted by the 3-hour heat delay. How did he spend it? He says, I showered, had food, stretched, then I had to lie down. I mean, I actually watched Roy Keane on that Tommy Tiernan show. It was quite a good 37 minutes if you really want to know what I did. So even the top stars are sitting there watching Tommy Tiernan and Roy Keane as Roy talks about his terrible dating advice and tips. And did you watch it?
I did.
It's good.
Yeah.
Decent television.
Yeah. Listen, I will.
The awkward pauses made it for me.
Roy do anything. I think the problem was everybody had such high expectations for when Roy Keane would eventually end up on Tommy Tiernan, and I actually said to someone I saw it was coming back, I bet you they get Roy on, it'll be the perfect interview. And the fact that Roy Keane, Tommy Tiernan said, I knew you'd be here at some stage, even though he doesn't know who the guests are, in his head he had definitely prepared for Roy Keane.
Yeah.
And listen here, I am the last person in the world to say how to do a good Roy Keane interview. I do think that there's a bit with Roy that actually, if you talk to him about Saipan and you talk to him about Alex Ferguson, he wants to talk about that. That actually gets him going and sort of winds him up.
The tough questions.
And actually maybe you can get to the deeper stuff then through all of that, but actually he's so aware of anyone trying to get something that he doesn't want to
Personal,
give.
something
And look,
personal.
I'm with a lot of people who feel like he doesn't have to give all this deep stuff to us. He's not. We're not entitled to Roy Keane looking dark into his past if he doesn't want to do it. And it's a tough gig.
Yeah.
And listen, Tommy Tiernan show last weekend with Patrick Kilty was outstanding, and actually the other interviews on those nights were outstanding as well. But like we all thought this was going to be the greatest interview of all time, and because it probably fell short of that.
It went from Roy. I was sitting with my dad, I think, watching it, and it goes from Roy Keane to Jenny Keane, the sex therapist. So I think a lot of households across the country had those awkward moments where you didn't.
Tell us about that conversation.
You didn't know who the next guest was, and then all of a sudden you have a sex therapist in talking about all sorts of stuff.
What did Dad think about the sex therapist?
We didn't discuss it too in depth. Let me tell you, we just sat there in awkward silence. Yawning, looking at the watch. Do you want a cup of tea?
It's not very late, this show, isn't it?
Jesus, yeah, I might go to bed. So it was one of those moments that we didn't ever speak about again. 9:01 AM on this Thursday morning. Well, it's not Thursday morning, it's Wednesday morning. We're joined by Jess Kelly, News Talk's tech correspondent, in partnership with Virgin Media. Bring your A game with 99.9% broadband reliability. I love it. I mean, it's the best thing out there. Gets me all nostalgic. Yeah, Jess.
Well done, Jess.
Thanks, Nathan.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Great.
EA Sports.
It's in the game. She's going to talk FIFA and Pro Evo. This is
right
up
your alley.
wheelhouse.
Yeah. Even though you're crap.
As soon as I knew you were on this morning, I was like, okay, talk about something that he'll actually know about. So it's kind of sad news. It was announced last May, that EA Sports and FIFA are no longer going to be partnering on one of the biggest gaming titles of all time, FIFA. The FIFA 23 is the last iteration, and this is because FIFA wanted $1 billion for the honour of having the FIFA branding on the game, and EA Sports weren't willing to do that, so now they're going to make what's called EA Sports FC. That'll be out this September. But I think it's an interesting one because, like, obviously FIFA is FIFA, but EA Sports has built up this reputation over 30 years, and now it'll be interesting to see if the fans will follow EA Sports or will they wait and see what FIFA does, because they're saying that they will make their own version of a game. That will be in 2024. But we've seen before where these famous companies, these very, very powerful brands, will go off and do their own thing because, you know, they're either eyes on money or different agendas, and then they fail because they don't have the expertise of the likes of EA in their corner. So I'm interested to see what happens.
Is there any information as to whether FIFA, the rulers of football, have taken all of the staff from EA Sports to replicate the game?
So what's interesting is EA has, there's a few different game houses within EA. So EA Sports is just one iteration of it. So there's the wider EA company, and EA has also retained more than 300 of the partners that are part of the FIFA game. So you have the likes of Premier League, you've the likes of Nike, all of the individual partners are sticking with EA, and EA is saying that breaking away from FIFA will give them greater freedom to innovate a little bit more when it comes to the game. So if you're a fan of FIFA, which I know you are, Shane, are you a FIFA fan?
I used to enjoy watching people play FIFA.
Oh,
that's just weird.
I know, my brother was good at FIFA. I was one of those people who, funny enough, I was of that generation who I went outside and played football with my friends.
Well,
rather than
lots of people can do
both.
Do both.
Like it's fascinating how it's developed from like sensible soccer back in the day, which was obviously the most basic of things, and then there was are you Pro Evo or are you FIFA? And Pro Evo didn't have all of those deals, so you would play as Manchester United wouldn't be called Manchester United. None of the teams would be called their real names, and even though Pro Evo was maybe a more playable game, FIFA had a bit of gravitas because you could be Liverpool or Manchester United, which is what kids would generally want. But FIFA now, while they have 300 partnerships, have lost some. So you haven't been able to be Juventus for recent times. You can't play Brazil as an international side. So they have lost some of them. But I still think, and listen, I'm sure FIFA feel it's called FIFA, so they deserve their billion.
Yeah.
But so many people, when they think FIFA, if you were to walk out into Grafton Street and say, what is FIFA? I would say at least 50%, if not more, would say it's a video game.
There are around 150 million games have been sold. It is one of the most lucrative deals. It's worth billions in terms of sales over the last 2 or 3 decades. So, and that's what I mean at the top about, will FIFA actually be the biggest loser here, because they won't have the naming rights. And although some of the teams, and there may be subtle changes within the EA game, if you're a gamer, you're probably going to want the best gaming experience, and you may be willing to make a compromise on what team you can be or what player you can have and so on. And I think that if FIFA doesn't come out with something that is going to blow EA out of the water, it's going to have been for nothing, essentially, just for the sake of an extra few quid. So it'll be interesting to see how well the EA Sports FC does when it comes out in September. Do you think you'll get it, Nathan?
I would expect so. It'll be demanded that I get it in my house. The fact that they have the partnerships now, FIFA can obviously say, well, you can play the World Cup on whatever their game will be, but they also have FIFA Pro, which is the players' organisation. It's really interesting where the money trickles down to. So the PFAI in Ireland, which represents the players, the League of Ireland players, their main source of revenue is through sales of the FIFA computer game, because they're associated with FIFA Pro and they receive so much money to have the rights of all their players that trickles down through all the players' organisations. So the fact that Seamus Coleman and Matt Doherty are named in that means that the money comes back into Irish football again, and you'd have to assume that FIFA Pro are going to stick with EA Sports because there's the guaranteed revenue, unless FIFA can go to the various national organisations and somehow force their hand that they need to go with them. But it's hard to see how you can come up with a game that can compete with the graphics and
what it comes down to.
playability of FIFA.
Yeah.
Like, it's like me saying I can host off the ball because I know how to talk on TV and radio, but I have none of the sporting knowledge. So which would you rather? Would you rather watch one of these?
You could bluff it, yeah.
Well,
exactly,
okay.
yeah.
Maybe not the best example.
Case in point.
But you know what I mean? Like, it's that thing of you can be the best at, in terms of, name recognition in the world of football, but then be crap at making video games. And these games are expensive enough. So if, when we get the early previews of whatever the new FIFA game is going to be comes out, and if it looks naff, or if we have something like we had with Cyberpunks where they've been working on it for ages but the game is buggy and glitchy and doesn't work, people aren't going to spend between 60 and 90 euro to buy it. And that could be the downfall. If 2024 is the first year where we don't have a FIFA game, but we have EA Sports FC, it could be the end of FIFA's involvement in the franchise. And once again, it's all about money.
We have some B-roll footage here. I think this is from this is the EA Sports.
This is the EA Sports
version.
FC, and there's only short trailers available of it. But they're very much trying to get the messaging out there that you're not going to be playing generic football team 1 against generic football team 2. They're very much focused on the innovation in terms of the graphics, ensuring that you have all of the competitive elements that anyone who's played the FIFA franchise over the last 30 years will want. They also have, EA also has the NHL, the PGA Tour, Formula 1. So they're not solely reliant on the football side of things. Like, they have a big franchise. We're seeing a huge development in terms of the NHL and the Formula 1 side of things. So I think it's only a matter of time before, there's a potential for a proper wow moment, I think, for the fans of FIFA without FIFA.
They've been very smart in how they've developed it as well. So Football Manager was obviously a huge game that I've spoken about. Is an obsessive game, and it's still there, and you can still play Football Manager. But within FIFA, there's basically a football manager mode as well. So like it frustrates the life out of me when I go in to the sitting room and the kids are playing FIFA, but they're not actually playing a match. They're just simming all the games and managing the teams and signing the players. But also, as all of these games do now, the Ultimate Team, where you are constantly having to actually invest more money. So you buy the game and then you're spending money on points to be able to buy better players for when you're playing online. It's a never-ending circle
You're
of
spending
cash.
real life money.
Or real life money. So and that's with all computer games now, whether it's Fortnite or Roblox or whatever.
Like the in-app
Fortnite,
purchases.
I think at least is free when you buy it initially.
Yeah.
So FIFA you still pay for. You pay your, was it 60 quid I
or
paid
70
for,
quid,
or something like that.
Yeah.
You still then, they want to have the newest, I'm going to start getting lost in the terminology right now. I'm going to say the newest skins and the newest players, all of that.
Yeah.
I know
you do,
this from
fellow
my-
kids.
But I know this, but so this is...
But that's how they make money.
So it's my young lad's birthday soon, and he's not asking for a game. He's asking for
Downloadable content.
V-Bucks.
Yeah.
And he's asking for money to put on his FIFA game that he's already paid 60, 70 quid for. So
But we've spoken about this before, and we've kind of touched upon it over the last few weeks here as well. A lot of these companies aren't making, although they're like their revenue sheets would show that there's money coming in, they're not making enough money to sustain them. And as time goes on, the creation of this content is only going to get more expensive. So if you look at mobile gaming, or if you look at any of the big titles for the consoles, the way they're bringing extra revenue in is either through Game Pass subscriptions or that downloadable content, whereby you pay anything from $1.99 right through to 40 quid for updates or extra tokens or whatever it is. That's how they're going to make money. And I think we're going to get into a slippery slope where people are going to be paying for all their streaming services, all their live entertainment, and then have to take out essentially a second mortgage just to sustain their gaming habit, because it does get pretty expensive.
Do you guys fall for the in-app purchases on your phones? I have a couple of, so the Flight Radar app, Flight Radar 24, where you can track the airplanes and stuff. I mean, I know.
I love that.
You pay.
If I'm out walking at home and I see a plane, I'm like, I wonder where that's going.
Really?
London to Cairo, 36,000 feet. The airline, the speed.
I don't know why I care or what the aim of it is.
I paid the in-app purchase for. So there's a generic airplane image for each plane, but if you pay extra. So the 747 is in the shape of a 747, and the A380 is in that shape, and the helicopters appear as a helicopter.
That's fair enough.
We have to take your card away.
I know. My second most used app is the Night Sky app, where you're out at night and you can, it uses that whole VR
stars,
augmented reality stuff where you can
I
click
thought I
on a
was the
star.
biggest dork in the office, but clearly I'm not.
No,
it's Shane.
Yeah, the in-app. Take the mantle, 100%. No, I love those apps. The in-app purchases I get drawn into. So if I was a FIFA fan, I'd be.
I don't understand people who don't use Flight Radar. Like, when you're at Manchester Airport,
Yeah, you use them in the airport.
everybody is queuing, and I'm like,
the plane hasn't even landed.
The plane has just left Dublin.
Yeah.
All you got to do is check here. It might be a different plane. It's like, it's not.
No, but I don't walk around the sky going, oh, I wonder what that is. I've no interest in that. But the in-app purchases thing, there's a serious side to this beyond kind of being able to tweak your airplane and helicopter images. It's a bit of a gateway into the more compulsive side of gaming and gambling and so on. And a lot of people don't necessarily realise that that's the case. A few years ago when Candy Crush was massive, and people were reporting that they were, buying the add-ons, extra coins for $1.99. And suddenly, before they knew it, they'd spent $3,000 on individual $1.99 purchases over 30 days. So I think it's worth noting that you can turn off or control aspects of your in-app purchases. And I think one of the worst and best things to ever happen is the Apple Pay and the Google Pay, that you can just double click and do it instantly.
So easy.
So be careful.
Too easy. Very briefly, Jess, and I guess airplanes and carbon footprint is a nice segue into this, but Microsoft is updating the Xbox to become the first carbon-aware console.
Yeah, this is kind of cool, and it's good for the environment but also for your pocket. If you do have an Xbox, you may know that it just goes on to standby mode. When it's on that, it can add between 60 to 100 quid to your energy bills, which is not ideal. So now Microsoft is pushing an update that will make it more energy efficient. If there's a big update due, or if you are downloading content, games and so on, the console will know the most efficient time from an energy point of view when to do that. So it could be between 2 and 6 a.m. in the morning. It'll also then go into sleep mode rather than standby mode. It still won't take a day and a half to boost up or anything like that, but they're all just about trying to lower the carbon emissions and also your energy bills, which is good news.
By standby mode, you mean if you turn off the Xbox, it's still on?
When it's on, the light is on, yeah.
Okay.
Jesus.
Right.
Save the planet, guys.
Yeah. But it's also save your pockets. Like,
well, yeah.
The energy bills, the consoles are bonkers. Very often I'll come home and I'll turn the source button on the TV and I'll see that the console is still on a game, still loading and just in the background. That is not good for anyone from an energy point of view or from a financial point of view. So always make sure you turn it off.
Jess, great stuff as always. Thank you a million for popping in. Jess Kelly, of course, News Talk's tech correspondent. You can follow her on Twitter at Jess Kelly NT, in partnership with Virgin Media. That slot, bring your A game with 99.9% broadband reliability. Okay, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what we've got coming up on OTB Sports Radio across the day. From 10:30, we're live with the Club Championship show. From 1pm, it's OTB Gold, an Irish football special with Given, Quinn, McAteer, all in partnership with Kevin Kilban. From 3pm, it is the Koi Gig podcast. 4 o'clock, it's our retro panel on Meath's heyday. 6pm, OTB Gold with Cullum Gooch Cooper. And from 7pm, the evening show is live with Joe Malloy. Wednesday night rugby, plenty more besides as well. You can follow OTB across all our social channels and subscribe to the OTB podcast network for all the best in the latest sports content. Now, after the break, Dan Quirke will join us to discuss the Dillon Quirke Foundation, which was set up in honour of the late Dillon Quirke, Dan's son, who of course collapsed and died of sudden adult death syndrome on the 5th of August last year during a match with his club Clonalty Rossmore in Semple Stadium. Dan will be joined in studio by the former Irish international Niall Quinn, who is an ambassador for the foundation. First, sports journalist Tom English joined Will O'Callaghan on last night's show, talking about the perception of Ulster's John Cooney in Scotland. Back in a sec.
We've been speculating for quite some time over here, Tom, about what's going to happen with John Cooney. And John Cooney's been asked repeatedly about potentially playing for Scotland, and he's open to the idea. Is there much talk in Scotland about him potentially coming in later this year?
Yeah, there is. There's bits and pieces. I would say largely negative about it. You know, respectful of what a good player he is. But it'll be a tough one for them to swallow. I mean, McConaughey is a tough enough one for them to swallow. People are going, what's going on here? You know, he made his choice. He picked England. You know, you made your bed, you lie in it. But Townsend doesn't see it that way. There was no mention of Cooney at all today. So if it happens, I'd be a touch surprised. I think there'll be a very, very negative response to it. The Scotland have 4 or 5 scrum halves, some of them young. Jamie Dobie at Glasgow. There's a couple of others, young, around that age. And I think if Cooney was to be parachuted in, even though he's a good player, at his age, that would be a terrible look for Scottish rugby, and it would go down very badly, especially since kind of like the media stuff that Cooney has done. It's like, make it up my mind, I'll wait and see. You know, that's not exactly sending a message out there to Scottish rugby that he's mad keen to play for Scotland, you know? It's almost like hanging in there, geez, I'll see if Andy Farrell picks me, and if not, sure, I'll go off to Scotland and that'll do me. It's not going down well.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB GAA.
The Kerry stuff is to always look to do when you're growing up, whereas with Fossa, there's probably days we were questioning maybe whether this would ever happen first. So now, as I said, it's special and it'll be all undone is the only thing if we don't get over the line next week, so everything is riding on that one.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
OTB Sports in your pocket. Listen to OTB Sports Radio 24/7.
Until that habit is broken, do you not realise how crazy those things were?
Watch your favourite OTB videos.
The benefit of being suspended, me and Scalzi were out every night, a couple of nights before the game.
Read all the latest sports news and opinions, all in one place, the OTB Sports app. Listen, watch, read. Wherever you are, we're always with you. The OTB Sports app, available to download now from your app store.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Yeah, 18 minutes past 9 on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM. You're very welcome back to the show. Now, the Dillon Quirke Foundation was set up in honour of the late Dillon Quirke, who collapsed and died of sudden adult death syndrome last August, 5th of August 2022, of course, in Semple Stadium, Thurles. Many of you will remember where you were when you heard that news. He was playing for hurling for his club, Clonalty Rossmore, in the Tipperary Championship. Sudden adult death syndrome takes 100 young lives in Ireland every year. Their aim is to raise awareness and save lives by screening every GAA player, both male and female, from the age of 12 onwards. The foundation has raised nearly 88,000, was at 30,000 when the Irish Examiner reported this story on December 18th. There's going to be a fundraiser when Tipperary play Kilkenny on Sunday, February the 19th, with proceeds going towards the screening process. The initiative also being backed by local politicians, of course, in the county. Delighted to say the former Irish international Niall Quinn joins us in the studio. Morning, Niall. And Dillon Quirke's father as well, Dan. Dan, pleasure to have you in. And I know it's not an easy subject to speak about. We might actually just kick this off by bringing you a clip, because we had John O'Keefe and Jimmy Maher, two of Dillon's teammates, on the show last year. I think it was October maybe, when we decided to come in and pay tribute to Dillon and talk about his life. So we don't have a clip, but they actually spoke eloquently about, I suppose, Dillon's age and how he exceeded his age in terms of the maturity and the type of person he was. He was that. I think Jimmy went on to say things like, he was always watching what the lads were eating in the house and always trying to get them out to the gym. He was a leader in many ways, Dan, I think it's fair to say.
He was, Shane, yeah, he was. From the day he could walk, he had a hurl in his hand. We used to be out day and night hurling. It's all about hurling with Dillon from a very young age. As he went through the years, he captained many of his club teams and onto the county, and he always looked after other people. His thing was, even with his training, he trained to the best of his ability, but made sure all his own teammates would do the very same thing. That was Dillon.
And a leader on the pitch as well, because the success that Clonalty Rossmore had in the recent years were very much centred through him. I know he was a modest lad as well, by all accounts, but
he was. I know he played a big part. He won the senior final in 2018. He was centre forward the same year, and had a great year and a great final, and that was his greatest moment. He'd always said to me, whatever hurling he did and whatever he did in his life, he'll never forget that day in Semple Stadium to win a county final, which is a great feat for any young fella growing up. You want to start with your club, and you'll start with your club and finish with your club, and he loved it. He just loved every bit of it.
It's funny, because all the stories that came out about him afterwards, and I think everyone in the country remembers, as we say, where they were when they heard that terrible news. And it was just the fact that he was in the prime of his life, and it was in Semple Stadium as well. Just the irony, the cruel irony of it all struck a lot of people.
Yeah, it did. It's like, for us, what we've gone through over the last number of months, obviously it's been horrendous, but we've got great support from the local communities, from the GAA clubs in Tipperary and all over the country. And that's why, I suppose, looking for some solace, we decided to start a foundation. And it's just gone from strength to strength, and we're blown away with the support we've got. It's been amazing, I know. And I know Dillon would love us to be doing this, and we think we can achieve quite a bit in the not too distant future.
You've got involved as well, Niall. I know you've Tipperary hurling running through your blood, quite literally. Your father, Billy Rahilty, was the club.
Yeah, he played Rahilty. He played with Tip for a few years. Had to go off to London looking for work as a young lad, so gave up his career. But his anniversary was 7 years yesterday, so I think he'd be delighted too that I'm in, giving Dan and the lads a bit of a dig out for Dillon, and it's very touching, and it's really tough looking back at Dillon, because Dan, used to tell me a few years ago, he's getting asked to go in and train with the Tip minors, what will we say to him? And do you remember that time, Dan? Yeah. And then on to the next one, God, he's in with senior training tonight. And so the whole thing built up, and we were all very proud of Dillon. And of course, his maturity, as you speak about, he was a standout player from a very early point in his introduction to the senior county team. And my last chat with Dillon was down at the golf in Adair that JP McManus invited me to play in, and Dillon walked around, and I played a shot one time, and it wasn't a great shot, and I remember him just saying to me, Quinn, how did you get on this golf trip? So he was funny like that, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
And Nick Faldo started laughing, and I told Nick what he was and the great player he was and what he was doing, and if they get to the final this year, there could be over 80,000 at the match. And Sir Nick said, all right, and how much do them lads get paid, And I was like, nothing. He went, oh God, he said, that's not good. So there was a lovely little moment between us all there, It
was the love of it from, there was a great line from Timmy Hammersley, his teammate, the last message he had from him, when he said, I just can't wait for Friday to come under lights in Thurles in the summer. Where else would you want to be?
Yeah.
So that summed them up.
It did, yeah. Sure, look, he had a great year this year with Tipperary. He played every minute of the championship with him, and he changed. I saw a lot of changes in Dillon in the last 12 months, particularly when he got his chance in the half-back line. He grew to be a great guy, really, and he was loving every minute. Then back with the club, his uncle-in-law, Declan Ryan, who was involved in the foundation as well, Declan made him captain, and he was so proud of that, and he really thought this was our year, we'd win another county final, and we wouldn't have been too far away. We just were unfortunate with injuries and stuff, We lost Timmy went to Dublin, and it was a bit unfortunate. We were beaten in the quarter-final by Kildare, and we had a guy sent off and a couple of more guys to injuries, but we were thereabouts. He'd been so proud the way our guys turned up after he passed, and we had great comradeship with Kilwan McDonough's, the team that we played against when Dillon passed, and they've been exceptional since. Actually, they have their victory dinner dance next weekend, and Hazel and myself are going up. But look, Dillon, he enjoyed all aspects of life, not just hurling. He joined us in the business a couple of years ago, and he loved to crack in the business. We have a delicatessen business, and it's all fun with Dillon. Morning to night was fun, playing tricks on his mum and tricks on me, and that's all. It was all Dillon.
Hardly working, yeah. It's funny, and I think that was one of the items at the funeral as well. The apron from
that's right.
The red helmet and things like that. I hadn't even realised that Dillon was born premature.
He was born 6 weeks premature. Hazel had a bad accident, and he had a couple of tough years early. He wasn't good to sleep, which didn't make it easy, but he came through that. He got myocarditis in 2018, and he was very sick at the time now, and he gave up the sport for 6 or 8 months. But he came back, and we thought everything was going well. He was being screened, not being screened. He had screening done, and everything seemed to be fine. And he got heart checks, and everything was fine. And while this year, where he played with Tip, when the pressure was its greatest for 6 weeks, when they played 4 championship matches, he was flying. And then back home with his club, and all of a sudden, this happens.
How was he in that first period when he wasn't able to play hurling, when he had to step away from sport?
Sure, he found it very difficult because he loved training, he loved going to the gym, and he loved running, and he loved playing hurling. He wasn't having it. He wanted to go back tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And Hazel, particularly, Dillon, you can't. You've got to give this time. Eventually, he did give it time, and we actually won another 21 county final the same year, and he missed the final because of it. But he actually came on for the last 60 seconds, and he shouldn't have had. But he just wanted to get on the field. That's all he wanted to do, was win something with his club. He loved it so much.
It's mad. We had I would have shared a dressing room with Brendan O'Duffy, the young Monaghan Harps lad, 19 years of age, killed in a road accident. We've had his father, Brendan O'Duffy, a senior, in here in the studio, and you've probably shared dressing rooms with people like this as well, Niall, because it was mad how the two sort of matched in my head, in that everyone said about Dillon and everyone said about Ogie that they were leaders, wise beyond their years in the dressing room. And sometimes in the dressing room you meet these types of lads who are maybe 10 years younger than you, but you look up to them in some ways.
Yeah, and they're not just doing it for themselves, they're bringing people with them. I think that's the kind of type of man that Dillon was, and it was obvious from a very early age when he started to get into minor teams that it wasn't just about him. He wasn't fazed by it. He wasn't looking around wondering if I'm going to make it. He was actually saying, I'm going to make this, and I'm going to bring a few lads with me, and we're going to have a great time. I think that attitude that the players like Dillon had, and no doubt Ogie had too. I can remember one of the players that passed from the Irish team, from all the setup, was Alan McLaughlin. And Alan came into the team in a really strange way. He arrived at the World Cup. He took Gary Waddock's place the night before the team had to go in. Gary had to travel to Italy. Gary had to go home to London, and Alan came in, and there was this kind of funny moment where you've got a player who's come in and your mate's gone back. Nobody knows this guy, and by probably lunchtime a couple of days later, we knew this fella's going to be great. He's great in the dressing room. He's a strong character, and he slotted in. So I see that kind. When I think back of Alan, I think about that time. I think of Dillon. The strengths players like that have in a dressing room, and the hold they have over you. And then when you think about them now that they've passed, Dillon being so young, Alan had his career. I mean, he died a young man, but he had his career, his full career. Dillon didn't have the full career. Mm-hmm. So you think all the time, you think what they could have achieved. But I because I knew Dillon separately, it was his wit. Like Dan says, he tried to play a few jokes and different things. I mean, he really was an absolute character, and you could do nothing but just love the fella. Big smile on his face, make you laugh, had a quip, and they're the kind of people you jump out of bed every day to speak to and to get to know.
yourself and Dillon were obviously incredibly close through the hurling, through work, so you would have seen a lot of each other, but I'm sure you heard a lot of that, what Niall's saying, actually the other part of his life when he'd be away with the lads, the stories, the things he would have got up to that you probably had never heard of before.
No. Like we actually went to the New Zealand in 2017 with the Lions for 3 weeks. It was a brilliant trip to have with your son, but we got friendly with 5 Rangers supporters, were Scottish guys, and they were in their 70s. And Dillon was infatuated by the 5 guys. And he was 18 and these guys were in their 70s. But the banter we had with them, and they loved him. They absolutely loved it. It's just funny, he could mix, whether you were 8 or 80, it didn't make a difference. That was Dillon, you know. And he didn't like plaudits from the sporting. That wasn't his thing. He didn't like any plaudits. He just wanted to do his job and help others, you know. That's the way he was.
Was Jimmy, just when you're speaking there, did Jimmy have a story about Dillon on a skiing trip or something, or there was some trip he was on and I think he went missing or something? He had a couple of drinks and rang his mother.
That's right, yeah. he went missing, and himself and Aaron, a friend of his, they were the first night skiing. They said to take a shortcut home after the night out through the snow instead of following the streets or whatever, and they got stuck in the snow and lucky to get back home. But when they eventually got home, Aaron and Dillon were frozen, literally frozen. They put him into the bed, and it was good for girls. Please ring Mammy, I want my Mammy. 23 years of age.
I was going to ask what age was he?
What did Mammy say when
Mammy loved that. She loved that.
Mammy's boy.
Mammy's boy. Actually, she's been great to him, you know, because everything revolved around Dillon when we were having breakfast, lunch and tea, whatever Dillon wanted we'd have, you know. So Hazel had been great to him. He was as good as he was because his mother made a great job, and I might say, you know, as a mum, like.
I'm sure the both of you did a great job. Clearly did, and that's the other thing as well, that as Brendan O'Duffy talked about the grief process and how there is no right or wrong way to go about it, and I can't even begin to imagine what yourself and Shannon and Kelly and the whole family have had to go through, and it's still very recent. But how have you managed to cope over the recent months? I'm sure, like, for Brendan Og, I guess the book that he wrote about Ogie, you know, kept him occupied. For yourself, even this charity is something to keep the mind occupied. But how have you found the last months?
It's very hard to explain it, Shane. It's 5 months now, and it's not getting easier yet. We still believe he's going to come back. You wake up in the morning or at night, you feel he's going to come in and at any time, but he's not. But I think as a family, we're so proud of Dillon. But we've had 24 wonderful years, and we're really grateful for that. And if we could have a legacy for Dillon now, is that we'll save lives, and that's what we're doing with the foundation, and that's the solace for us as a family. That's how we get our solace, and we know we'll save lives, which is great. That's what keeps us going.
The way the community is rallied around, like you talk about the connection with Kilruane that's still there, the Tipperary hurling community, the Munster hurling community, the Irish GAA community as well. I'm sure that gives you a lot of strength as well, that so many people have actually been so shocked by this, so affected by it, that they want to come around and support you and show that actually Dillon meant an awful lot.
Yeah, we're getting it from all over the country. I think last week UCC played Quirke, and Tom Kingston, who was the UCC manager, I played against Tom as a minor, and part of the gate receipts were put to the foundation. And we're getting this from Wexford, from Northern Ireland, from clubs and counties all over. It's been incredible. And it's just, we've got momentum now, and we're really taking off. And if we can keep this going, who knows where it will end. But at least we know that we're going to save lives. And Niall will tell you a little bit more there about different federations and different countries.
Yeah, I suppose, you know, the SADS problem came up before now, and in other countries they responded and reacted quicker. In Italy, for instance, 25 years ago, a real good effort was put in by the government to screen all young sports people, and here we are 25 years later, 89% reduction in SADS deaths, you know.
Right.
So it's obvious, but it's kind of not, because lots of people, parents, their children play sport, they're delighted, but they don't actually ever maybe take the time to stop and say, just wouldn't mind getting him checked now. And there's so many people playing sports, the GAA, you know, as well, the FAI, and Brendan O'Carroll got involved in this as well and saw the problem too a couple of years ago. And I think all of us who have children who are playing would actually stop and think, you know what, I should really do this and get my children checked. And what what Dan and Hazel and the family are putting together here is a really good, efficient way to get as many young people tested in sport in the GAA as we know. In the first instance, please God, it might even go further than that, depending where fundraising goes. But to think, to do it without what Dan's doing. So the bottom line about this is, a truck will come in, a medical truck will come into a club. There will be times there for all of the club members to go in and get their check and their screen. And if the news is good 7-10 days later, that's great. If it's not so good, at least then the parent knows and something can happen and you're on a better road. When you try and get every parent to do that now in our world, you'd have to go to a doctor, you'd have to get an appointment, the doctor would have to give you a reference. There's a big sort of long drawn out effort to maybe get a child screen normally. And that's why what Dan is doing is short circuiting all that and bringing together medical expertise that will just put so many more people at ease, but also help the ones that do screen oddly, if you like, and stuff shows up. It's a wonderful way, I think, of satisfying all parents if it gets big enough. Numbers are numbers, but the idea that this foundation could maybe get up to €1 million, that would be 15,000 children, young adults checked. That will save lives. 100,000 will save lives, which will be sort of 10% of that would be 1,500, and so that's in fairness to Dan and the family, they're starting in the county, they're starting local, they're putting it together with a group AMS, a medical service team, and it's just win-win-win. There's no downside to this. Every parent, should look at doing this. And it's great that the GAA world spots it and are supporting him. Every day, Dan rings me and says, "You won't believe what happened today. Such and such has happened." And I think it's the fear maybe for Dan and the family was, how do we get it off the ground? How do we get it started? That fear is gone now because of the goodness that's out there already, knowing and trusting what the foundation is going to do. So now it's a matter of doing it, and it's great to come on and be given the airtime to tell people that it's here and it's for them. It's not for Dan. In theory, it is. It's for everybody out there. It's for the parents, and not to go through what they did. So, and for me, knowing Dillon the way I did all the years, and knowing Dan as long as I did, Dan is a very modest man as well. Dan scored 3 goals in an All-Ireland under-21 hurling final for Tipperary. He's going to kill me for mentioning that.
You're loving this, Dan. Pass. You're a dual player. He played big ball as well.
Well, he played a bit of big ball, but I think he was, when they used to just put the big lad up front and whack it into him. I think that's as much as the football.
You know all about it.
I know a lot about it. I had a career of it.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah. Well, you say he was born with a hurl in his hand, Dillon, but there was no coincidence to that.
I don't know. I wouldn't say. Thanks for mentioning that, by the way. No, he was.
Afterwards there,
His uncle would be Declan Ryan, his uncle now.
Right, yeah.
Hazel, my wife, and Olive are twins, and Declan is Olive's his husband. But Declan was always hurling with Dillon as well, and he had it from a lot of angles, really, The club, the former players that went through the club, John O'Keefe, Timmy, he looked up to all these guys. So it was all hurling, yeah.
What a brilliant legacy, when it's so shocking to read 100 lives a year affected, 100 stories like your stories, and it's such a simple way to go out. It's an expensive way to go out, but actually to be able to bring it to clubs when kids go in at a young age, you'll never actually know the amount of people,
correct,
and the amount of lives that you save by this.
That's true, Nathan. It's great, and it does work, and it's for parents. If you're listening, it's for parents not to go through what we've gone through, because it's horrendous, and it does work. That's great.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff, because you think back even to 20 years ago now, Cormac McAnallen, or no, it's less even. But I mean, when people see the photographs, like Joe Hayes is a man I know you know well, Niall, a man I would have known from up in Monaghan as well. There was the great photo of the two of them, I think, on the pitch in 2018, maybe after the county final.
Right, yeah.
Smiling. If two men could be smiling anymore, I wouldn't want to see it.
Iconic photos.
It's unbelievable.
It is. And funny, was another great one. The logo for the foundation is the red helmet with Dillon holding the hurley.
Yes.
I don't know if you've seen that picture, but how that was taken, it's incredible, because there's might be 100 heads and one hurley and a helmet sticking up. It's great,
It's amazing.
It is, and it's a lovely logo to have for the foundation, because everybody reacts.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about it, which is great.
The other thing as well, and Nathan, you touched on it, like the club and community, how everyone comes together at a moment like this. Like even I think John O'Keefe and Jimmy Marr spoke about finding out the news themselves. I think they might have all gone to the local church or whatever to kind of come together as a team, and news filtered through, of course, but everyone sticking together. It's one of those things. I'm sure all of Dillon's friends and teammates now are part of your lives forever.
Oh, they are. That's it, absolutely. I mean, from the time he passed to 3 or 4 days around the time of the funeral, it was just incredible. It really was. Like, you'd be blown away by it. The crowds that turn up at the funeral, the different things people have done since and at the time, and the funeral itself was a beautiful funeral. And even we had the mine a month later. Niall was down for
amazing.
It was on the GAA pitch, and there was thousands at it, which was just fabulous. It was everything was lovely, and the help we've got from our own chairman would be an uncle of Dillon's, Andrew Friday. Andrew's the local chairman. The work he's still doing is incredible, like. And it's all over the county. Everybody wants to help, and they're great, and we just need people to donate to the GoFundMe page, and that'll get us there.
100%. Well, listen, we'll be sure to share the GoFundMe page on our social channels and all the rest, and hopefully add to the push that you guys are doing. It's amazing work, and brave to come into us and have the conversation as well, like John and Jimmy did as well. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's a great thing to remember, Dillon. And listen, this foundation is a beautiful way to do it. So listen, Dan, Niall, thanks a million for
thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Both of you coming in. Much appreciated. And listen, as I said, we'll share that GoFundMe link on the page as well. 9:39 a.m. on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM. Thanks a lot for tuning in today. As always, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Good luck.
Say to look back in the game now. We're joined by Graham Hunter, our man in Spain. Graham, how are things?
Well, everything's grand. Thank you very much indeed. It was a decent match.
Oh, that was a very good match, a very good performance, particularly by Barcelona. Chavi made a tactical change which worked, which is the 4 players in midfield. So Busquets maybe needing a little bit extra cover. De Jong played beside him. Gavi played essentially as an inside forward over on the left, and Pedri played in a slightly different position on the right. Dembele kept the width on the right hand side, and that allowed them pretty much to dominate Real Madrid's midfield from the start.
No, I see it differently. I think you're right that he went for 3-4-3 in possession and 3-4-3 attacking, and so long as you judge that the off the ball audience is interested enough in this, then I saw it differently from you. Gavi played on the right. It's true that with the breaks that he made, often you could see him creating down the left. So for Lewandowski's goal, the ball comes off Gavi's left foot from the left of the penalty area. And for Pedri's goal, the way that Gavi breaks, he had the freedom to play when they were on the break, where it was important to be. But in terms of the formation, the 4 was made up really rather of Alex Balde, the 18-year-old fullback, left back, who was in place of Jordi Alba, playing whenever Barcelona were either pressing for possession, in possession, or attacking. Balde played in midfield. It became 3 at the back. And often, when Dembele was in midfield, rather than the wide winger in a 4-3-3 that we're used to seeing him, and we're used to seeing Guardiola and Luis Enrique and Tito Villanova when he was alive, and now Chavi, spreading their arms and telling the wingers to open the pitch. It wasn't like that at all. When Barcelona were defending, they were often 4-4-2. In the second half, there were large chunks in their 4-4-2. And the man who was off Lewandowski was Pedri. And it was an unusual... under Chavi, they have reverted to this 3-4-3 that when Guardiola played at Barcelona as coach, he didn't like it. When Johan Cruyff's dream team regularly played 3-4-3, it left them exposed at the back. And it's something that Xavi used, in my opinion, specifically to try and dominate Madrid's tired, aging midfield. He judged, Will, that Ancelotti's men would be second to things, second to challenges, second to decision-making, second to aerial challenges. And if you opened on what was different about Xavi's idea in this final that they won comfortably, to see the ball being punted long regularly by Marc-Andre ter Stegen from by kicks, from free kicks, and from open play, and for Araujo, less regularly but still, to punt the ball long. These things were utterly forbidden not that long ago at Barcelona. They were the cause of enormous furore. In fact, they were prohibido, completely verboten under Pep Guardiola. And they were used for a reason under Xavi, because Xavi's argument to his players was, if we punt the ball long and Madrid win it aerially, we'll win the second ball. We'll pounce on it when it comes. When Militao or Rudiger one, you compete with them, you jump with them. So you had this the sight of 5'7" Gavi jumping against 6'2" Militao, and occasionally winning, and then winning a second jump against Benzema immediately. It was remarkable. But when the ball came down from a Real Madrid headed challenge where they won it, Barcelona's players were on the loose ball, the 50-50 ball, or on a Real Madrid man in position like hungry dogs, and that tipped the apple cart, Will.
Is there a certain element here? I've heard suggested that Chavi the player might not have necessarily liked Chavi the coach and his tactics, but is this down to Chavi being slightly more practical maybe than some of us would have thought? Because he had a very rigid way of thinking about the game as a player, but he's shown himself to be quite adaptable in his first coaching gig and now at Barcelona as well.
You're spot on. He doesn't really like the way that this is talked about at the moment. I think, one, he's a bit fragile about being he wouldn't call it an agent of change. He would say that the fundamental philosophies, and really honestly, if you watched the clip that Rio Ferdinand promoted on Twitter, which was of the UK TV coverage showing a 44-pass move where every Barcelona player touches the ball and the passes are quick and Real Madrid can't get near him. If you were to judge by that alone, you'd say, well, Xavi hasn't touched the fundamentals well, but in everything else, he is being pragmatic. He is being modern. And that lumping the ball long against Atleti the week before when they won 1-0 in the Metropolitano, when the ball was played over Ronaldo's head so that Dembele could chase, which was a different use of the longer ball. But again, it was something that you never saw in previous years at Football Barcelona. When he explained it, there was a slightly defensive tone, Will, because there are hawks here, whether they're ex-players, they're the media or fans, who just don't recognise and don't accept the idea. But you are right that Xavi is gradually saying, do pardon me, when the situation calls for it, when we've got Lewandowski playing, and when we're playing against a side which is ageing or is slow or plays a very high line, sometimes it's necessary to be more direct. And it's odd to witness. And for example, I don't think it would have any kind of similar effect in the tie against Manchester United, which is coming up in a month in the Europa League. But against Madrid, I genuinely believed it was applied specifically because Xavi believed that particularly in the state they're in right now, Madrid couldn't cope. And he was proven absolutely correct. So it was a spectacular success for him, thinking in his little tactical laboratory, here's how we should play, here's how it will make Madrid uncomfortable, and this is how we can benefit. And for coaches, when that comes off, the satisfaction is high. But when you tell your players, this is what we're going to do and this will happen, it wins you extra loyalty, extra admiration, and it should earn Xavi. Whether Xavi the player would have liked it or not, Will, you're right. It should add him. It should gain him a little bubble of time and space to continue to be both pragmatic and to innovate a little bit.
Things are particularly uncomfortable for Vinicius Jr. Again, Araujo is the man who's been given the task of going over to the right-hand side to stop him. Now, Madrid at different times, especially when Camavinga came off and Fede Valverde played in a different position, he was given space to roam. But particularly in the first half, and Jules Koundé provided a lot of cover as well from the right centre-back position, Araujo was able to do a very good specific job on Vinny Jr. when he's put on him. Same as the Bernabeu last season too.
I think in every Clásico, including the one in Las Vegas, where Araujo has been moved to right back, not because that's a way to let Koundé in at centre-half, which is his preferred position, but as you pointed out, to specifically man-mark Vinicius and match him for pace. The results in total are 4-0, 1-0 and 3-1 in Barcelona's favour, and in none of the games has Vinicius really been identifiably himself. In Las Vegas, it was a much more, I don't know if you remember that 1-0 triumph for Barcelona where Rafinha scored in the pre-season friendly, but it was a much more even battle. And Vinicius made Araujo uncomfortable. But they can match each other for pace. Araujo is a warrior, which not every current Barcelona player is at all. And on Sunday night, while you're right, the tactic was the same, there were a couple of things to be noted. One, there was a horrendous challenge which the referee chose not to book after about 5 or 6 minutes when Vinicius, already just off the pitch, gets cut right through. Araujo comes through him in a challenge that if it had been in open play in the middle of the pitch, the referee would have had absolutely no option but to book him. Whether it's because it was early and this referee, although young, is of the old school about like, you all get one go each. or whether it was because it was just off the pitch, it was a bookable foul. And it marked the territory earlier on. And I'm not saying Vinicius was scared or hid, but he, like the rest of the team, is a little bit off form. It was a different formation for Madrid because although they often play Valverde in a role that oscillates like Pedri's and Gavi's between midfield and attack, and it often functions, in this instance, Vinicius wasn't able to be tied to the wing and dragging a player out there and linking with Benzema in the same way. Effectively, Vinicius was a second forward playing off the 9. And it didn't click, it didn't work. He didn't really do anything that was identifiably special, which is what you get from Vinicius in almost every game over the last 2 seasons. Whether he's on form or not, whether the team's on form or not, you do get special moments, and sometimes he dominates games. And in this instance, it was a combination of Araujo playing really well, playing until his physical limit when he had to sit down and be subbed off, which is a point when, you know, Barcelona's sphincters tighten noticeably because he has to be fit for the remainder of the season. When the difference of Barcelona with Araujo in the team or not is cataclysmically big. And on this day, he did his job until he could not do it anymore, by which time the game was won and Vinicius was subdued.
Of the free transfers that Barcelona have made, some of them are probably going to be even further sold on, with Kessie being linked with a move away, and maybe Memphis Depay will go to Atletico Madrid. Has it turned out that Andres Christensen may well have been the best free signing they've made? Because we all kind of expected that Araujo and Koundé were going to be the 2 centre-back pairings. But then Christensen has had some really good performances in big games. You mentioned the Atletico game a couple of Sundays ago where Christensen played really well. I thought he was very assured at the weekend. Christensen seems to be fitting in quite nicely there.
No, I agree with your entire premise, except for when the season began, he wasn't yet, in my opinion, fully ready for what was being demanded of him. It's also the case that he came into a team which was very green, where new pieces were being fitted together, and his display in the power play when Bayern Munich, having been, people who didn't watch this game and who now know that Barcelona are out of the Champions League will either have to take my word for granted or else, unless you watched it too, Barcelona fundamentally outplayed Bayern Munich in Bavaria in the group game, lost, didn't take their chances, and they made a heap of chances. They should have categorically have won, even though Bayern scored twice. And in the first goal, it's Marcos Alonso's fault, but in the second goal, it's patently Christensen's fault. And the comparison between the day then and now, as you say, is gigantic. He looks positionally assured. Whether he plays next to Araujo, which I think is his preference, or Koundé, there's a partnership, there's movement whereby there's not a lot of dialogue needed between the two of them. Invincible? No chance at all. But he looks like the guy who, when he's playing with Kjær for the national team, is impressive, where Denmark have consistently for the last few years punched above their weight. And I think your premise is right, that Christensen at the moment is giving enormous value for money. The staff are very, very satisfied with him. And from my take on it, he's not a natural left footer, but he's predominantly playing on the left of one of the two more dominant right-footed centre-halves, which will be Araujo or Koundé. In the cup, it might well be next to Eric Garcia, who barely gets a sniff now. And overall, you're right. The Dane has looked a calming influence, and he looks as if he's understood both the club and what Chavi needs of him, and he's becoming a mainstay. You're right.
Was Sunday Gavi's best performance so far? I think a pit bull is what you compared him to just before the World Cup, and he was the exact same at the weekend. He was at different times. He was hassling the Real Madrid midfielders. He had no problem going after Modric and Kroos in possession. And then when the ball was transitioned and turned around, he found himself in very effective positions. And what I thought was different maybe to Gavi last season, he got his head up, and his passes for the 2 goals he set up were very, very clinical and very clever passes.
Again, I couldn't agree more. I think that pound for pound, there were some displays when Chavi was new in the job and Barcelona were very ragged. When this fiery... He's a force of nature. Chavi keeps saying that he's heart and lungs with legs, and the ferocity with which he competes is magnificent to watch. And again, that's not echoed right throughout the Barca squad, nor throughout modern football. There are players from the 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s who would utterly recognise Gavi in all his characteristics. because he may be pint size and he definitely has modern skills and modern ideas about what to do with the ball. But, you know, Billy Bremner would have recognised him. John Giles would thoroughly recognise him. And Gavi can be nasty. And you talked about his peripheral vision and his timing of the passes and the powers, which particularly the ball to Lewandowski. The ball to Pedri was far easier, given that Cruz and Ceballos hadn't tracked Pedri, and he just had to get it right. He had to work for the ball from the left to Lewandowski for the second goal, and it was a sensational use of his left foot. He's slightly more powerful on his right foot, so the fact that both assists came off his left, and his finish was good. His finish, although he was beautifully put through by Lewandowski, there was a little lift to get it beyond Courtois to Courtois' left. It was an exceptional game. And all I was going to say was that pound for pound, there were games when Barcelona were rocky before they hit ramming speed in January of 22, when Gavi wouldn't let a draw become a defeat, when he turned draws into victories, where he did look less refined and he was far more likely to be sent off. I don't know if you spotted a nice one where Ceballos tugged his hair to try and get him to react and get him sent off. And first of all, Gavi looks to go and hook him and then sort of restrains himself. And then the Barca players are there for their man. And that's something that they've learned. Well, in recent months, Barcelona have been a timid team who when it got physical or when there were arguments to be had, it wasn't all for one for all. It is now. And they burrowed across to make sure that he didn't get suckered into a fight. But he held himself back. He checked himself. Believe me, that's not his natural instinct. So on many levels, this was his most all-round, his most mature performance for this kid. He's 18, 19, 18?
He's still 18. So if we're to look at this as, let's say, the next generation of Barcelona, is it a lazy comparison to compare them to Chavi and Iniesta, Pedri and Gavi as a pairing in midfield then?
It depends what your comparison is saying. I mean, it's inevitable to compare them if you think about them, two players with a slight age gap coming through together in midfield, all four of them being relatively modestly sized. The comparison's inevitable. It's not lazy at all. It's what you say then, I think, that can become astute or lazy. One of the things that we know for absolute sure is that both of these guys have come through with a sang-froid, an assurance, and a power of emergence that beats even Chavi or Iniesta. Because while Chavi was precocious in how early Van Gaal debuted him away in a Super Cup, I think at Mallorca, it took several years, and it took Rijkaard changing Chavi to what's called an interior, an attacking right midfielder, rather than the pivote that he was. And remember, Chavi said to Rijkaard, "Don't do this, I can't do that." He said he believed he couldn't play the position in which he won all his Champions Leagues, he won all his trophies for Spain, and he became, in my opinion, Spain's greatest ever footballer, in my opinion. Chavi couldn't see that change and was fearful of it, by his own admission. And Iniesta, as brilliant as he was, and again, given a debut by Van Gaal away in Belgium in a group game in the Champions League Champions League group that they already conquered, by the time it came to the Champions League final against Arsenal, which I think was 2006 in Paris, Iniesta didn't start because Rijkaard believed more in Edmilson and Van Bommel. Now, in a Barcelona whereby there are urgent needs, first Koeman and now Chavi have trusted implicitly in these guys. They're both playing for Spain far earlier than Chavi and Iniesta. And where it would be crazy is to say these two will go on to equal or supersede Chavi and Iniesta, because the latter part of their career, just like Cristiano Ronaldo played, I think, 28 Champions League games before scoring a goal. Yet he's by a distance the Champions League's greatest ever scorer. You can't tell what will happen when the spurt comes, or if it comes from 24 to 34. You just don't know. And with these guys, we can't know. What we can say is that so far, they're more prolific in what they're achieving and what they're doing. And both of them are far more confident and are more trusted than Chavi and Iniesta were at the exact same ages. And even that's saying something, isn't it, Will?
It is. I wonder if Frankie de Jong is going to be permanently in that midfield with them over the next decade. You mentioned the Manchester United game, which is coming up next month, and Manchester United fans were probably hopeful that de Jong will be wearing their colours in this game as opposed to him still being at Barcelona. He's been frustrated sometimes, Graham, when he's been taken off in games, and sometimes supporters have been disappointed that Xavi has taken him off at different times. But how is de Jong now fitting into that midfield this year?
I know you didn't ask me this, but for me, he's been an acquired taste. I dislike some of the things that he's chosen to do with his development. But I do admire the fact that he dug his heels in and said, I'm not leaving. And I've said this on the show over the months a lot, that a lot of the noise about the price and were Manchester United bidding enough or were Barcelona being greedy, the central fact, and I reported this to you guys as it was going on in the summer, de Jong never wanted to go. And people can say didn't want to go to United or Ten Hag if they want, but the case was different. It was a very crystal clear, I'm not leaving here.